Views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back to another jam-packed episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for America Rising Media sending over the raid over on Pill. Do appreciate you. Thank you so much as well to Trump One for dropping that cookie. You guys are the best. You know what they say in the swamp? Round here, we protect our own. And swamp things, well, they're gonna swamp. You know, Tim Burchett actually said something pretty profound today. The swamp is not evil. The swamp is not a bad place. It's a beautiful place that God created where habitat thrives, animals live. It filters the rot and the muck from the water. No, Washington, D.C., it's really a sewer. And I can't disagree with that. Tim Burchett for a long time, this guy is, I think he's my favorite person in Congress. He's like the only person who seems like he's real. But anyways, we've got some Epstein stuff, big Epstein news. We've got a section on corrupt judges. We've got more criminal referrals than you can shake a stick at. And of course, we're going to do an update on what's happening over there in Charlotte, North Carolina. Rollerbug, Dollar Holla Zach, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. If you guys are watching on any of the platforms, do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up, hit that like button, hit that red pill. Help us out by sharing the show. Dadgummit! That's so great every time he says it. So sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope that you like that thumbnail. I spent a lot of time on that today, making the Swamp Thing thumbnail because, of course, as I said, they protect their own. The swamp is going to swamp, and I think that's exactly what we've seen over the last couple of days. And it's not the first time that we have seen the D.C. swamp protect someone who needed to be held accountable by Congress, and there is a common denominator. We are going to talk about that common denominator. But first, I just need to give a big shout out to the first sponsor of today's show. That's going to be my friends over here at... Of course it doesn't happen. This always happens to me as soon as I get it up here. My friends over here at onenessdrops.com/redpill78, where they provide your kits to create chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide, of course, is a product which allows you to create clean, safe, potable drinking water from sources that would otherwise not be sufficient. It takes care of microbes and viruses and all kinds of creepy crawlies, bacteria that you might find inside water. If you need to create clean, fresh drinking water, as you likely will at some point in your life, this is definitely the thing that you want to have on hand. Chlorine dioxide has a whole bunch of different uses. In fact, we also use it in our dog's water dish because it will clean the nasty microbes from your teeth in your mouth, and then it will leave the good stuff behind. So unlike Listerine or something like that, which is just going to strip everything out of your mouth, that's not what you want to do. It's kind of like the idea of antibiotics and probiotics. You need to have a good microbiome in your gut if you're going to have a proper order to your system so that it moves properly and everything works together. Chlorine dioxide, I think about it a lot like that. You can get other things from onenessdrops.com, though, and when you use onenessdrops.com/redpill78, you'll get 15% off everything that you order. That includes the chlorine dioxide kits. That also includes their mullein extract for lung health, or their soursop extract for cellular regeneration, or their pure DMSO. They also order things in bundles so that you can save money because you're getting more than one thing. And then you'll also get that 15% off at the end when you use my code REDPILL78. You can check them out in the description of this video. There's a whole bunch of other sponsors that you might want to check out as well. If you do, you are directly sponsoring and supporting the show, and I really do appreciate the people who allow me to continue doing this. And speaking of one, Q Patriot Angel over here on Rumble says, Zak Paine, the grassroots Walter Cronkite, going down in the history book. Zach, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And those are big shoes to fill. So thank you for being here with us. I really do appreciate it. Yes, Dan, you are absolutely correct over on YouTube. As I have said for years, the currency of Washington, D.C. is blackmail. And that's why people never seem to hold each other accountable, because everybody has something on somebody else. And, of course, when it's time to cash in those chips, just as it was in Congress over the last 2 days, those chips get cashed in. And the only people who get left holding the bag are the American people. It's a real shame. It's one of those reasons why I think most of us simply do not trust Congress. There's a whole lot of reasons not to trust Congress, but that one right there is definitely one of them. Now, I want to start off with something that is newsworthy, but not necessarily something that I would normally share on the show. You know, I am a conservationist, okay? I'm like a Teddy Roosevelt style conservationist. I love the outdoors. I love visiting national and state parks. I love camping, hiking, enjoying the outdoors, and I really love animals. You guys know that. I've talked about that on plenty of occasions. When I saw this today, I thought it was so fascinating. In Canada, scientists who have been monitoring a pack of wild Canadian wolves have just discovered that these wolves have taught each other how to fish using nets. These must be nets that have been left in this body of water by fishermen, and the wolves are quite literally using the nets to catch fish. Take a look at this. It just goes to show you how intelligent animals are. A lot of people look at animals and just think that they're driven by, you know, one thing: eating, procreating, and perhaps going to the bathroom. But in order to learn how to use a net to catch a fish, like, that shows a certain level of thought, and order to the thinking, and obviously a higher level of intelligence than I think a lot of people give just an average everyday wild animal the credit for. So I just thought this was so cool. God is amazing. Wow. Caught a fish. Caught a fish. There you go, buddy. Good boy. Good boy. So amazing. Anyways, wanted to give you, does he put the net back? Yeah, he does. He takes the net back out there and he drags it back to catch more fish. It is totally cool. Anyways, just wanted to go there. Now, I also wanted to show you guys the new video from the 4th PsyOps group. Now, the other day, I had mentioned that the 4th PsyOps group has created a podcast. I said I was going to check it out, and I was going to let you know whether or not it was something you needed to check out. Short answer is no. It's a big zero. It is not for us. It is a podcast that is really for other people in the operator community, and it's pretty dry. You know, I'm not saying that there won't be something in there that might be interesting, but I think for most people, they're probably going to listen to it and they're going to think, this is not something that I need to track. But you know, these videos from the 4 PsyOps groups are definitely something that we need to track. So let me go ahead and make this full screen. There is an interesting little Easter egg that you're going to find at the 57-second mark. We'll go ahead and pause it. You guys can view that with me here.
Goddamn army.
Some of the greatest PsyOps of all time.
There's another force applied in combat that we generally don't think of as a weapon of war. That weapon is words. Words are weapons.
Telling the truth is the only way in which to influence people.
This is psychological warfare.
Okay, this is the clown from the original cartoon where they got the clown and the ghost. Oh, God, hold on. It goes so fast. There is a Pkwy clown that they show very briefly. I might not be able to get it to show up here because this is imprecise. However, I know that I will be able to take you to a screen grab of it. Now, look at that. They also have ghosts that are dressed like operators right there. Yeah, it goes way too fast. All the different incarnations. Man, oh, there it is. There it is. Pkwy the clown, Pkwy the frog, Pkwy the clown. Absolutely. Look at that. I mean, if that's not a nod, I don't know what is. I mean, obviously, they could simply be pointing to the power of memetics. So that's certainly been a theme over the last 10, 20 years or so. But I thought that this was really cool because it's just there for like a hair's breadth. Yeah, it's so brief. And if you didn't go through and scrub this literally frame by frame, you wouldn't find this. So pretty cool stuff. Anyways, every time they put a video out, there is something included in there that's a nod to us. All right. Now, we also have a follow-up to the CIA and military members of Congress who had suggested yesterday that people in the intel community and people in the military should essentially engage in insurrection against President Trump and the administration. Steve Miller agrees with me. I am not surprised because he is one of the most based members of the administration. Rapid Response 47 reposts Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who was the first intel community member in the video. Remember, she is a CIA agent. And then they include this clip from an interview that Stephen Miller did last night where he calls it out for exactly what it is. What they are calling for is an insurrection. They are calling for illegal action against the administration. My friends, that is treason. And you all know what happens to people who commit treason.
It is insurrection, plainly, directly, without question. And when you have one of the lawmakers on that video being unable to state in, as you say, lengthy cross-examination, a single so-called illegal order, it just proves the point. It's a general call for rebellion from the CIA and the armed services of the United States by Democrat lawmakers, saying that you have not only the right, but the duty and the obligation to defy orders of the commander-in-chief, that those who carry weapons in America's name should defy their chain of command and engage in open acts of insurrection, that the CIA, the clandestine service, which isn't even legally authorized to operate in the United States,
great point,
should engage in, again, acts of rebellion and insurrection. These lawmakers should honestly resign in disgrace and never return to public office again for even daring to think, let alone to say these words and to say them proudly. But it shows what a dangerous moment we're in. We have seen the Democratic Party nurse the flames of violence and insurrection against the federal government for the last 10 months. When you see this continuous campaign of violence against ICE officers and Border Patrol agents, when you see Democrat sanctuary politicians and Democrat sanctuary governors side with the rioters, side with the assaulters over federal law enforcement, and that spills even into juries and grand juries, when you see Democrat jurors engage in nullification to let off violent attackers who are engaging in physical violence, physical assault against federal officers. This is a dangerous moment. You have a political party, an organization, the Democrat Party, and their message is that any action, no matter how unlawful, no matter how dangerous, no matter how much it threatens constitutional order, is justified if it keeps Democrat policies in effect at any cost.
This is really, really blatant stuff. Now, yesterday when we talked about this, a lot of people were asking, I see a couple of comments in the chat, if they're calling for an insurrection, how is it that they can continue to get away with it? I would say two things. Number one, yesterday we mentioned that perhaps they may be protected by the speech and debate clause, which is what governs the ability of Congress to lie and say essentially whatever they want. Adam Schiff was able to do that a lot over the years. And then number two, just because they've gotten away with it thus far doesn't mean that they will get away with it ultimately. And as we stand right now, we don't have any known instances of members of the intel community and the military actually following the directives of those Democrat lawmakers in that video. I would imagine, however, that the administration is paying direct attention. Now, for the people who have attempted to stand down from direct orders of their superiors in this administration, largely those people have been let go. They have been stripped of their duties, they have retired, or they've been simply fired. If we really get into the spot where we're going to be prosecuting all of the people who have stood in the way of Donald Trump, I don't know that we have enough time left in the next 3 years to do that in a really comprehensive way, as it needs to. So, considering the breadth of the deep state, how wide they span, I think that the administration is likely looking to do this in a way that will be as not disruptive, as little disruption as possible. Let me put it that way. And I know that for some people that's not enough. A lot of people want it to be disruptive, and I feel you. I feel you. However, this is just my take on what the administration is doing. And I also think about the longer timeline of the game that we're playing. And it looks to me as well that the administration is playing things out in an orderly fashion so that we will be able to dismantle this deep state apparatus, because I've seen it being dismantled. And I realize that that isn't necessarily going to give people the sort of rest and relaxation that they're looking for right now. All I can say is continue to pay attention, because I do have some follow-ups here today. Specifically, let's begin with Senator Mike Lee. I think it was just the other day on OnlyLands. We were asking, whatever happened to the audit of Fort Knox? What about the audit of the gold? Well, Mike Lee is now once again introducing the Gold Reserve Transparency Act, which would institute the first government audit of the gold at Fort Knox in over half a century. So this would open Fort Knox to the auditing process. We would take a look. We would physically check what is being held there, and then the results would be made public to the American people. President Trump had made this as a proposal back in February. So we've had a time lapse in between there, but now we're seeing something actually taking place. President Trump had said at that time, we're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold, tons of gold. Now we're in a position where we can pass this legislation. We can get it through. How is anybody going to argue against this, especially after the fact that we just pushed the Epstein papers through, or the Epstein files, however you want to classify them? Mike Lee has said for over a half a century there has been no comprehensive audit of America's gold reserves. Americans should know whether the literal national treasure is safe and accurately accounted for. That means passing the Gold Transparency Act, opening Fort Knox, U.S. Mint facilities, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to an audit, and then making those results public. This is something that, of course, has been called for many, many years by people like Ron Paul. I was a huge fan of Ron Paul back in the day. I still like Ron Paul. But this is something that I think needed to happen a long time ago. It just needed to happen at the proper time. Now we finally have an administration with the will to do so. If it turns out that gold is missing, as many of us suspect, if you've watched the Baseless Conspiracies episode that John and I did on the Fort Knox gold and on the Treasury in general, then you'll see that there is pretty good evidence to suggest that a lot of that gold was taken out under past administrations. So this act would mandate a comprehensive and, most importantly, independent audit of every single facility that is housing gold that is owned by the federal government. So not only Fort Knox, but literally everywhere we've got gold. It would give a full accounting of all transactions involving America's gold for the last 50 years, which would match us right up with the last time there was an audit, even though that audit was suspect. And then those findings and the investigations would be publicly published and reported by the Comptroller General to Congress and to the Secretary of Treasury. That's Scott Bessent. If Scott Bessent sniffs a rat, then I think Scott Bessent is going to be willing to come out and say something about it, and even more importantly, do something about it. So keep your eyes on the gold, because it looks like we may finally get what we've been asking for. Let me also say thank you very much to AH13. In the very first second, you see Absolute 1776's wife's icon. It goes fast, but it's her icon of the new 4POG video. Pretty cool to see that. So let me actually pull this up. Okay. So when I'm seeing it, I'm going really slow through this. I see black, and then it immediately opens to the tape player. That's the first second. And the tape player video brightens up. You see somebody manipulating the tape. I'm not seeing it. So her icon is an AI generated image of herself for Christmas. So okay, so if somebody has a screenshot of it, obviously, please let me see it. I'd love to see it. But I don't see it in the video, guys. If somebody can send it to me, email it to me, or email me a tweet where somebody talks about it, that would be redpill78@proton.com. Yeah. All right, now let's jump into the Epstein stuff. So President Trump on Air Force One was being questioned by a reporter about the Epstein files as he was already trying to take somebody else's question, and he was not trying to entertain the whims of a fake news reporter. Let me say also thank you to Lee Walden, who says, our CEO of Peace suggests audit all of Congress and AIDS. I agree with you there. Northern Pike, around. I have no idea what you're saying here, dude. We protect around here. We protect our own. That's exactly what I was thinking. It was my Louisiana the Bayou Brawl. Thank you. Bring it, Rooster. Northern Pike, you're killing me. Age 13. It's right before the tape player. It's literally within the first second. So again, if you can send me a screenshot, I'd love to see it, because I just went through it as slowly as I could and I didn't see it. But if it's her actual icon, which is her AI-generated image of herself, that is obviously a pretty staggering thing. So, yeah, please send that. Big Gouda says, Dollar Holla for Zak Paine, the hardest working man in no biz. That's right. I appreciate you. Red Gun 51, thank you for the can. Good Dog 45, thank you for the can. Filter Dog 1 says, Cory Mills. Don't worry, my friend, and appreciate the donation. We are going to be talking about Cory Mills in just a moment, because it dovetails with the Epstein commentary here. All right, so President Trump stops this reporter as they're trying to interrupt him and literally says, quiet piggy. Now, this is obviously an AI-enhanced video. It's not real because you've got Miss Piggy in it, but just take a listen.
Sir, yeah, if there's nothing incriminating in the file, sir, why not
Quiet Piggy. Oh, and she's dead silent as soon as he says it. What a boss, man. There were so many people who were all upset about this yesterday. They were like, we can't normalize this. You know what? The fake news mainstream media has already been normalized, lying, denigrating people, covering up stories, completely ignoring a lot of things that need to be talked about. So I have no problem with President Trump calling a rude fake news reporter piggy. Quiet, piggy. Oh, I love that. Wang Dang Doodle already made a graphic for it over there on Pilled. That's great. Hold on. Let me add that. I need to add this. Yes, add to favorites and submit for channel. There you go. Now you guys should be able to add Quiet Piggy into the chat over there on Pilled. All right, so yesterday, as we said, the Senate was sent the Epstein Files Transparency Act by unanimous consent, and they did pass it. It is now on its way to President Trump's desk. I haven't heard whether or not he actually signed it. I have no reason to think that he won't. There is one concerning thing that is in this bill, which is kind of a vague clause that allows for the DOJ to unilaterally redact things. Now, it does address the issue that we talked about yesterday, that the names of innocent victims who don't want their information revealed, that could be blacked out and redacted as a result of this. But most importantly, it is addressing intel-related sources and methods and law enforcement stuff, which means that if somebody at the DOJ, I guess, ultimately it would fall upon the shoulders of Pam Bondi. We don't know who's doing the actual redacting, though. Ultimately, they could redact something in these documents that's in the possession of the DOJ that would implicate Jeffrey Epstein in a larger intel or law enforcement-based operation, which I think everybody here believes that Jeffrey Epstein was part of the intelligence community. Which intelligence community? American, Israeli, Saudi, Austrian. I mean, the guy had passports from all over the place. Who knows? But we really want to see all of that stuff, and I am leery about the possibility of sources and methods being used to stop us from getting all of the information that we want. Ultimately, we're going to have to wait and see how this pans out. But I have no reason to think that President Trump isn't going to sign it in its current state. Trace1010 says, Dala Hala. And Big Gouda, thank you again. Also, Lee Walden says, stop your squealing, piggy. No thanks, Joe, over on Pilled says, thanks to that, Lisa and Zach. Thank you for that. Stacks, thank you for the can. And Red Gun, thank you for the can as well. All right, now, we also have a clip that my good friend Patriots Are in Control was able to track down. This is former economist for Bill Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama, Larry Summers, who was, of course, exposed for having a very close association and relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Here is Larry Summers in 2016. He was apparently very concerned about President Trump becoming president. Now, we already saw communications between Jeffrey Epstein and Larry Summers, which seemed to indicate that Larry Summers had a fixation on Donald Trump. I think that it's quite clear from those emails that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein also were not fans of Donald Trump. They also believed that Donald Trump was likely a dog who didn't bark, which is a sort of euphemism to suggest that Donald Trump had given information about Jeffrey Epstein to authorities. That's something that I believe. Of course, we don't have a clear indication of that coming from the federal government. They're probably not going to be releasing FBI files that suggest that Donald Trump had given them information about Jeffrey Epstein. I just don't think that that's realistic, but it's been said often enough, and it was the opinion of Jeffrey Epstein himself, who was then later indicted and arrested and thrown into prison by Donald Trump's administration. But you have to wonder, when somebody is so nervous about Donald Trump becoming president, who also happens to be a very good friend of Jeffrey Epstein's, what is it that they're worried about?
I think the prospect of Donald Trump being president would be the gravest threat to our prosperity, our security, and our freedom in my adult lifetime.
Wow.
So that's the thing I would worry most about.
Some of you will have seen my statement of regret.
Now, this is also a clip of Larry Summers yesterday at his Harvard class, where he is essentially saying out loud the statement that we read about how ashamed he is of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I was shocked to see that he opened his class by essentially apologizing publicly.
Expressing my shame with respect to what I did in communication with Mr. Epstein, and that I've said that I'm going to step back from public activities for a time, but I think it's very important to fulfill my teaching obligations. And so, with your permission, we're going to go forward and talk about the material in the class.
I think the process.
Now, if you were a student of Larry Summers, I doubt that anybody would really be wanting to talk about the material in the book after that sort of thing. Anyways, again, the same question. What was Larry Summers so worried about that he was going to need to come out and make this statement publicly, that Donald Trump would be the biggest threat? Here's the thing. He wasn't wrong. Donald Trump was the biggest threat to the established world order, and that would be the deep state, that failed and corrupt establishment, the global criminal cabal that was running Washington, D.C., and so many other governments all around the world. Now, we do also have some more information about Larry Summers. Not only has he said he's going to step away from his public commitments, he has now officially resigned from the board of OpenAI. And this is obviously something that's going to sting. His high-profile exit from the artificial intelligence firm came earlier today, just 2 days after he announced that he was stepping back from all public commitments following the release of thousands of his emails with the disgraced financier. I bristle every time they characterize Jeffrey Epstein as a disgraced financier. The man was a child trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein was a criminal trafficker of misery. Jeffrey Epstein may have been the source of blackmail material for intelligence agencies all around the world, but he was anything but a financier. Okay, that is like the most milquetoast and whitewashed phrasing that you can use to describe Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was not out there playing the markets. He wasn't just taking people's money and buying mutual funds and doing stock trades and derivatives or put options, all of that stuff. Jeffrey Epstein traded in human bodies. And that's why Jeffrey Epstein was so popular with a lot of these people who also were fully aware of the fact that he was a sex offender. He was a child trafficking sex offender. He was on the registry. So anybody who maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after that time, in my book, is suspect. Larry Summers certainly is among those people. So Larry Summers now out at the OpenAI board. I'm certain that we're probably going to get a bunch more announcements like this. I'm kind of shocked that Larry Summers is the one who has been hardest hit from this, because Larry Summers obviously had a publicly known relationship with Jeffrey Epstein previously. But there's a lot of other people in those emails. I haven't seen really anybody else coming forward and saying, geez, I'm super embarrassed. Certainly among them would be the Clintons, Bill, Hillary Clinton. I mean, we have heard about Bill and Hillary Clinton and their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for years. Stacey Plaskett definitely not apologizing. Yesterday, we had spoken about the refusal of the Clintons to come in for their scheduled subpoenas. Now, these subpoenas hold legal weight. And I mentioned yesterday that it was probably time to enforce the legal side of those subpoenas. And wouldn't you know it, House Oversight Chairman James Comer, who is responsible for those subpoenas, actually went on Just the News not that long ago, late last night, and he said that he's actually prepared to have both Bill and Hillary Clinton arrested if they continue to fail to comply with their legally binding subpoenas. Everybody wants to get Bill and Hillary Clinton under oath so that they can testify about the specific nature of their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. If they have nothing to hide, then, they have nothing to fear. He also said in every official inquiry he has seen, the Clintons have repeatedly avoided answering any questions about Jeffrey Epstein on the record. Just like Larry Summers, what are you so afraid of. I also want to take you back. Do you remember on election night when Hillary Clinton refused to come out on stage because allegedly she had gotten so inebriated, she was so angry, she was trashing a hotel room, she had to send John Podesta out several hours late to tell her supporters that she wasn't coming out and she wasn't going to concede the election. It was rumored that Hillary Clinton said, if Trump wins, we'll all hang from nooses. Well, there's only a couple of reasons why something like that would take place, and maybe the relationship they had with Jeffrey Epstein would be one of those things to fall under that category. He said he is now going to go this legal route. He is prepared to have them arrested. Let's take a listen.
Mr. Chairman, there are two very important people. That you asked to voluntarily cooperate. They didn't schedule their interviews. Now there's a subpoena. But Bill and Hillary Clinton, if they continue to duck you, will you take them to court? Will you try to enforce a subpoena? Will you go the Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro route?
100%. We're going to go that route. We expect to hear from Bill.
Now, let me just say here, remember, that was the reason that Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro were arrested, prosecuted, and thrown into prison. Except they had something that Bill and Hillary Clinton didn't have. Both Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro had executive privilege. The content of their conversations with the president were protected because of their relationship and placement inside the administration. Bill and Hillary Clinton have no such privilege when it comes to a known pedophile sex trafficker such as Jeffrey Epstein.
And Hillary Clinton. Look, Donald Trump's answered questions for years about Jeffrey Epstein. Every day he gets asked questions about Epstein and he answers them in front of the American people. We've subpoenaed Republicans and Democrats. Two Republicans have come forward, Bill Barr and Alex Acosta. They did interviews and deposition, and those were tough, but they did them. They didn't back down. Other Democrats have sent letters that saying they knew nothing about Epstein, which would hold in court if something ever comes out that they did know something, then they've committed perjury there. But the Clintons have never responded. They're the one group in this investigation that's never had to answer questions.
Now, they may have never had to answer questions, but they sure have responded through their legal counsel because they had their original deposition dates pushed back, and then they had them pushed back again. And then they just didn't show up. So now we are in full refusal mode. They are in violation of a lawfully binding subpoena, which was sent from the House Oversight Committee. Hillary Clinton and Bill both have testified before plenty of committees in Congress previously. It would appear that Jeffrey Epstein is the one subject they do not want to be on the record talking about. I would suggest it's probably because even if they don't admit to something really horrible, the very fact that they would have to confirm all that we know publicly that they've never addressed, that's enough to sink them and destroy any fledgling reputation they may still be clinging on to. And, of course, they're going to be asked about some pretty uncomfortable things
in front of a credible reporter, and they've never certainly answered questions from attorneys or members of Congress. So we expect the Clintons to come in, or I expect the Clintons to be met with the same fate that Bannon and Navarro were met with when the Democrats were in control.
So as far as I know, there has been no criminal referral yet for Bill and Hillary Clinton. I'm certain that this was kind of an opening salvo, just kind of put it out there into the ether. Their lawyers are obviously going to be paying attention to it. They know that they are really up against a rock and a hard place. Either they come in and they testify, or now arrest is actually on the table. I say, let's do it. Go ahead and arrest them. Haul them in. You can hold them in the basement of the Capitol building until such time that they agree to testify. And who knows how long that's going to take. So I'm very excited about this right here. All right. Now, another aspect of why the Clintons probably don't want to come in is because it's not just that Jeffrey Epstein came to the White House 17 times. It's not just that Bill Clinton is reported to have visited the island some 28 times or to have flown on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express as many or if not more times, because they also went to Africa and a bunch of other places. But besides Bill Clinton's association with Jeffrey Epstein, we also have numerous people from his first and second administration that also had visited Epstein's island. That includes Larry Summers, who we just spoke about just a moment ago. But Bill Clinton, 27 times on Epstein's plane, and he is known to have gone to Jeffrey Epstein's island. He was reported to have done some very terrible things with the victims. The victims themselves testified to that. I think that's one of the reasons that we are not being given access to the grand jury testimony, because that grand jury testimony is going to give specifics about those interactions. But Al Gore, his vice president, in 2019, we learned after a release of some of the Epstein files that one woman had claimed that Al Gore also came to the island. A woman who claims she was a sex slave for Jeffrey Epstein said she met former Vice President Al Gore. Those documents were made public by the U.S. Court of Appeals after a lower court's decision to make 2,000 pages public from a series of court filings back in 2015 from the case of Virginia Roberts Giuffre against Jeffrey Epstein and confidant Ghislaine Maxwell. So that was the first time we ever heard anything about that. As I've already told you, Larry Summers was known to have traveled numerous times to Jeffrey Epstein's island, sometimes called Orgy Island, also called Little St. James. He was also known to have flown on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express on a number of occasions. We have that straight from the flight logs. Just for anybody who's confused out there, Jeffrey Epstein owned multiple planes. He had one private jet, and then he purchased the Lolita Express later. From the flight logs, you can tell which plane people are flying on. The Lolita Express is the plane that would go back and forth to Little St. James. President Trump may have flown on Jeffrey Epstein's older plane. That was the plane that would go from Palm Beach to New York. There was a handful of trips there, but Jeffrey Epstein never had Donald Trump fly on the Lolita Express. Donald Trump never went to the island. And according to those flight logs, Summers took 4 of those trips on the Lolita Express to Jeffrey Epstein's island, Little St. James. On one of those trips, he actually took his newlywed second wife, Elisa New. That was for their honeymoon in 2005. And, of course, Larry Summers was the senior U.S. Treasury Department official during President Clinton's administration. Basically, he was Treasury Secretary from 1999 to 2001, and then he was the former director of the National Economic Council for Barack Hussein Obama from 2009 to 2010, and he was also the former president of Harvard University from 2001 to 2006. He's the one who set up all of those multi-million-dollar donations to the Harvard endowment. He's also the one who set up Jeffrey Epstein's private office on the Harvard-Cambridge campus. 10 days after Larry and Elisa Summers were married on December 21st, 2005, Larry and his new wife flew from Bedford, Massachusetts to Jeffrey Epstein's island. They were accompanied on this flight by someone with the initials G. Of course, that is known to be Ghislaine Maxwell. The flight logs also show from Bed, which is in Bedford, Mass., to Tist, which is the Cyril E. King Airport in St. Thomas. And we also have Sandy Berger. Sandy Berger was shown to have flown to Epstein's island on a number of occasions, along with Larry Summers. And according to those logs, the Summers trips, 4 of those Summers trips on Epstein's jet. Oh, hold on a second. No, on the same flight that President Clinton's national security advisor, Sandy Berger, flew, at least one of those trips, Larry Summers was on there as well. Berger was also famous for being charged with stealing documents from the National Archives, but stuffing them into his clothes to protect President Clinton and himself from actions related to Osama bin Laden. We've reported on that many years ago. But Sandy Berger, you might remember, smuggled classified documents out of the National Archives detailing Bill Clinton's efforts to thwart terrorist threats to the Millennium celebrations. That crime cost Sandy Berger $50,000. He had to do 100 hours of community service. He lost his security clearance, and he also lost his law license. But the agents who went after him have not forgotten because they like to remember things like that. So now Berger is not only the poster boy for this type of theft, but he is also now well known for flying to Epstein Island on September 24th, 2005. He flew from St. Thomas to Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. We don't know how he got there. Maybe he came on a boat or something like that. But the one thing that is a constant among all of these people are Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. They were thick as thieves, touching tips, if you know what I'm saying. Now, interestingly enough, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, as she stands flanked by FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy AG Todd Blanche, she was earlier today announcing the new indictments for a Canadian pro snowboarder who also happens to be a drug lord on the FBI's most wanted list. And an intrepid reporter asked Pam Bondi about the new investigations that President Trump has directed her and the DOJ to engage in. And this goes back to my statement earlier in the show about the proper timing. Not only that, but also not divulging your plan to your enemy. Just because we, the people, want to hear something from the administration doesn't mean that it's a smart move for them to say what we want them to hear. But take a listen to this. Pam Bondi is asked what changed with the information that the DOJ had in relation to Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators.
Madam Attorney General, the DOJ statement earlier this year saying that the files would not release mentioned the fact that the review of the documents and the evidence did not suggest that any additional investigation of third parties was warranted. What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information. There's information that new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads. If there are any victims, we encourage all victims to come forward, and we will continue to provide maximum transparency under the law.
Because you'd be in jail.
All right, so Pam Bondi saying that not only has her opinion on the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein co-conspirators, not only has it changed, but there's also new information that they have been able to get their hands on. This is really important because I think a lot of us assumed that over the course of, since the original Jeffrey Epstein investigation, and then, of course, multiple administrations that were stacked with deep state swamp rats, anything of substance we assumed would have been tossed out. Maybe they found new information coming from that secret skiff in 9582 in the basement of the FBI building. Or maybe it came from somewhere else. Who knows? But the important thing here is that Pam Bondi is suggesting, she's stating it explicitly, that new information about Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators has now come to light, which means that investigations can proceed and prosecutions, praise be, may happen. That is what I am hoping for, but this is the first time Pam Bondi has suggested this, and I think it's a wonderful thing. The Canadian over on Pilled says, I listen at night when I'm at work. Keep that podcast RSS updated, please. Much love. Keep kicking ass, Zach. Thank you. Sometimes the service that I use to upload the podcasts doesn't work, and then it's like kind of hit or miss. So when you'll see 2 or 3 days where suddenly podcasts will not be there and then they'll come out all at once, it's because I just haven't been able to upload them. Because I got deleted from all the podcasting platforms years ago, in order for me to be able to upload them, I had to go with a service which is not necessarily as technologically sound as some of the other ones. And it's definitely caused me some issues when I try to get those uploaded. So anyways, I'm glad that you're listening. I just uploaded the last couple of days today. Miss Echo, thank you for the cookie. I really do appreciate it. All right, you guys, real quick before we continue, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. All right. Did you know that the 75% of the Nobel Prize winning ivermectin that helped save millions during the pandemic is primarily made in Asia? Well, not the wellness companies. Introducing American-made ivermectin, safe, trusted, and produced right here in the USA. For more than 30 years, ivermectin has shown a proven ability to eliminate parasites, and new research also points to potential benefits for skin immune and cancer support. All of that is currently being investigated. There is a study going on right now down here in Florida. Most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet, but the wellness company is offering a higher 18 milligram dose for just $3.33 each. You'll get a 6-month supply designed for 4 21-day cycles, all at an unbeatable price. Get your U.S.-made ivermectin today by scanning the QR code or heading to twc.health/Rumble and use code Rumble to save $30 off, plus get free shipping. This is available for U.S. residents only. Thank you very much. All right, and continuing. Yesterday, we were talking about the upcoming vote to censure Stacey Plaskett over her Epstein collusion, that day that she was texting him and asking him for advice about questioning Michael Cohen about the ins and outs of the Trump administration. Well, the vote came up, and the House of Representatives late last night voted against censuring Democrat Delegate Stacey Plaskett from the Virgin Islands. This was, of course, kind of shocking for a lot of people, especially after they just passed the bill for the Epstein Transparency Act, which incidentally was the first bill in Thomas Massey's career that he's successfully been able to get through the House. So the vote against Stacey Plaskett, or the vote for Stacey Plaskett's censure was 214 to 209. Obviously, 214 voted against her censure. Every Democrat, of course, voted against her censure. 3 Republicans voted present, which means they didn't vote at all. They just said, I'm here, I'm not voting yes or no. And then 3 other GOP lawmakers, for some reason, decided to join the Democrats. So you've got these 3 who joined the Democrats, not surprised by any of them: Don Bacon from Nebraska, Lance Gooden from Texas, and Dave Joyce from Ohio. The present votes were Andrew Garbarino from New York, Jay Obernolte from California, and Dan Muser from Pennsylvania. A bunch of nobodies. I don't know any of these guys. They haven't made a name for themselves, and as far as I'm aware, they haven't done anything of note. But this was a shocking development because, I mean, Stacey Plaskett, without any sort of qualms, even after Jeffrey Epstein had been placed on the list, she was texting him during this testimony. She was taking advice from him in 2019. This was also, mind you, at the time that he was under federal investigation. It was just shortly after this that he was indicted and then picked up by the feds. And Ralph Norman, when he introduced this resolution, I thought, hey, it's a slam dunk. Of course they're going to vote to censure Stacey Plaskett. But they didn't. Now, let's talk about why that might have been. But first, Jamie Raskin defended his representative his delegate Stacey Plaskett for the relationship she maintained with Jeffrey Epstein, which is also something that I am not surprised of. Of course, as I said earlier, swamp protects swamp. But he offered this strange defense of Stacey Plaskett. Now, he argued that she was merely taking a phone call from a constituent. Are you kidding me?
Sure, Jan.
Stacey Plaskett also made this sort of defense of herself. We'll listen to her commentary in a moment, but the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was simply a constituent of Stacey Plaskett, no, not at all. Jeffrey Epstein was a multimillionaire who was also a trafficker, who was essentially persona non grata among anybody who had half a brain. And for Jamie Raskin to suggest that Stacey Plaskett was just accepting a phone call from a constituent on her personal phone number in the midst of a hearing, I mean, if it was me, and I was in a hearing, my phone would be on silent. My phone is on silent when I'm preparing my show every day because I need to focus. I need to know what's going on, and I need to come up with some takes. Now, he was responding to the House Freedom Caucus's motion, the resolution, rather, to remove Plaskett from the House Intelligence Committee for being actively coached by Jeffrey Epstein. And Raskin asked, strangely, where is the ethical transgression? So Jamie Raskin is essentially saying that he doesn't see anything wrong with maintaining a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, even though for months and months and months and months and months, when they thought they could use Jeffrey Epstein against President Trump, they insinuated that, well, actually, there is a problem with having a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, it's only a problem when it's something that they believe they can use for leverage. Well, they want to give them another headline, Raskin said, which is what they've arraigned a Democrat member for taking a phone call from her constituent, Jeffrey Epstein, in the middle of a hearing. And of course, I don't think there's any rule here against taking phone calls in a hearing. Now, if you want to actually give her the chance to explain what happened, then we would take it to the ethics committee. Okay, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I still don't see where the charge is. Where is the ethical transgression? Where is the legal transgression? How about the moral transgression, Jamie Raskin? Are you saying anybody on your side of the aisle who had a phone call with Jeffrey Epstein should be censured? Yeah, anybody who maintained a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein once they knew what kind of a person he was, absolutely censure them, especially if they are being coached by him in the midst of active testimony, attempting to use this man who was also, by the way, colluding with media outlets and individuals like Michael Wolff and the Financial Times and the New York Times to see how they could undermine President Trump's administration or to blackmail him, if you want to go to the furthest extent of that argument. Be careful your answer there, because there's a lot more that's about to come out, right? You should think about what is the principle behind the rush to judge. Well, I think we've already done that calculus, Jamie Raskin. And these text messages between Epstein and Plaskett, who is a non-voting delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands, being exposed was a pretty big deal. I mean, there's a reason that fake news Washington Post was the one to put together the report and release it on the front page of their own stinking toilet paper. Now, Epstein was watching the hearing live in 2019. He texted Plaskett that she looked great, buttering her up, and explained to her that Cohen had referred to Trump's former assistant, Rona Graff, while he testified against President Trump. And then 1 minute later, after the questioning was over, Jeffrey Epstein texted her great work, meaning that she had done exactly what he suggested she should do. Now, the relationship with Stacey Plaskett and Jeffrey Epstein was long-standing. You see, she had received thousands upon thousands of dollars from Epstein in the form of campaign contributions during 2016 and during 2018. And this is, again, years after he became a convicted child sex offender for the prostitution charges, which was already a step down from what he had originally been charged with. Stacey Plaskett also represented Jeffrey Epstein when she was simply a lawyer, not a delegate inside the House of Representatives. So people on people in the Virgin Islands, they were well acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein. They knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't until after he was dead that the Virgin Islands suddenly grew a conscience and went after not only his estate, because there was many, many millions of dollars, but they also went after J.P. Morgan Chase and others for the role they played in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking enterprise. So the idea that Stacey Plaskett was merely taking a phone call from a constituent is disingenuous, and it is offensive. Now, as I said, Stacey Plaskett's censure did not make it through the U.S. House of Representatives, and there is a very particular reason why. Anna Paulina Luna, shortly after this vote, even during the vote, she made comment on it. Now, let me go ahead and play you the comment that she made on the House floor, and then we'll break it down.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
I have a parliamentary inquiry.
The gentlelady from Florida will state her inquiry.
I was wondering if the Speaker of the House of Representatives can explain why leadership on both sides, both Democrat and Republican, are cutting back-end deals to cover up public corruption in the House of Representatives from both Republican and Democrat members of Congress.
The gentlelady has not stated a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, but I think the American people know what happened tonight.
All right. Now, Anna Paulina Luna is another one of those people who gets a lot of flack because she's pretty. She posts bikini pictures sometimes, but she does have some good takes, and I think that she is supporting the right things. All right, so what she is referring to right there is an alleged backroom deal that took place between the Democrats and the Republicans to essentially save Stacey Plaskett under the threat that the Democrats were instead going to bring a censure motion against Cory Mills and also have him stripped of his committee positions if they did successfully censure Stacey Plaskett. This is the very definition of smoke-filled rooms and backroom deals. Now, we've talked about Cory Mills' problems previously. Now, they also they were threatening, I guess, an ethics investigation. And if you've paid attention to the reports that we've done on Cory Mills, then that should be no surprise. Mills is currently facing a restraining order for allegedly threatening to commit an act of sexual blackmail. Explicit photos he threatened to send around to his former girlfriend, Lindsay Langston. I believe she's like Miss USA or something like that. Langston claimed in the petition that she filed back in August that NBC News, and it was given to NBC News after Mills and her broke up. Mills said he would blackmail her using nude images and videos, and he also allegedly said that he would physically harm anyone that she dated. From the report, Cory continued to message me on Instagram accounts I run after blocking him and asking him to not contact me. The messages progressively got more threatening over time, and the judge granted her restraining order. The Plaskett censure, Luna said on X, failed because House leadership exchanged that censure failure for the withdrawal of a vote to censure and refer Cory Mills to House ethics for investigation. The swamp protects itself. Now, she also implied that this dirty deal was taking place when she made that comment publicly. And I think that she's correct. I think the American people are smart enough to figure out that something certainly happened behind the scenes. Now, we also had this report confirming that from Brianna Morello. She said Republican leadership wanted to save Cory Mills tonight, so they blocked Stacey Plaskett from being removed from the House Intelligence Committee. If Plaskett was removed, Dems were expected to immediately bring a retaliatory resolution to censure Mills. One congressional member telling me Republican leadership sent 3 Republicans on a kamikaze mission to save Cory Mills. The Dems were going to target Mills because of that restraining order. And there is a lot more salacious reporting that you can go back and you can see in regard to Cory Mills and this ex-girlfriend. There are also text messages going around which appear to show Cory Mills having a conversation with one of these girlfriends that he's had, and he's talking about passing her around at a party. Kind of sounds similar to what, what's his name had said from North Carolina, Madison Cawthorn. Madison Cawthorn talking about those wild sex and drug-fueled orgies that they would frequently have in Washington, D.C. Now, you also might remember that Cory Mills was one of the people who voted against the censure of Ilhan Omar several months ago. It was alleged at that time Cory Mills' vote was due to the fact that he and others in the Republican caucus were trying to stop him from being censured and referred to the Ethics Committee. So now we have 2 failed censures of people in Congress who I 100%, and I would imagine every single one of you in the audience believe 100% should have been censured for the actions they've taken. Now, Nancy Mills, now Republican from South Carolina, has officially filed a resolution to do what the Republicans were trying to prevent: censure Cory Mills and remove him from his committees. It looks like Mace, along with Representative Luna, have not only talked about this, but they're also supporting themselves together. The censures of Omar and Plaskett should have been able to go through. Those should not have been things that stalled in the way that they did. The actions those people have taken while being members of Congress is simply unbecoming of the office. The problem here is that unfortunately, it's also the way they do business in Washington, D.C. Let's take a listen to Nancy Mace speaking on the House floor earlier today.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Cory Mills be censured. Representative Cory Mills forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. Representative Cory Mills be censured with a public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and Representative Cory Mills be and is hereby removed from the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the House.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered.
All right. Now, we can actually take a look at that censure letter that Mace sent in, saying that Mills's record is tainted by allegations of stolen valor, domestic abuse, arms deals with the U.S. government, and foreign nations while serving in Congress. I've reported on all of those things in the past. There is a lot of sauce to back all of that stuff up. Mace says this is not a man who should be sitting in the House Armed Services Committee or the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Both of those committees would afford him particular insight, which would allow him to have a far more successful career as an arms dealer because of his ownership stakes in companies that are trafficking in arms. So she says, Dear Speaker Johnson, we write with grave concern regarding the fitness of one of our colleagues, Mr. Cory Mills of Florida's 7th Congressional District, to serve on the Committee of Armed Services and the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Prior to serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Mills founded Pkwy Solution International, LLC, and Pkwy Defense, LLC, and acquired Amtech Corporation, now renamed as ALS Incorporated, companies which engage in security and military contracts with the U.S. government, as well as the governments of foreign nations. Mr. Mills retains an ownership interest in these entities. In 2024, the Office of Congressional Conduct found from January 23 to present, Pkwy Defense and ALS have been actively contracting with the federal government, securing close to $1 million in federal contracts for munitions and weapons distributed to prisons across the country. Specifically, since January 9th of 2024, 94 contracts have been awarded to entities owned by Representative Mills. The report went on to conclude there is substantial reason to believe that Representative Mills may have entered into, held, or enjoyed contracts with federal agencies while he was a member of Congress in violation of House rules, standards of conduct, and, most importantly, federal law. The OCC report also noted, according to its website, Pkwy Solutions is currently registered and or partnered with trusted local firms to work in the following countries, not only the United States, but also Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, UAE, Australia, Kenya, Malaysia, and Kuwait, 9 different nations. Public reports also indicate Mr. Mills has either sought or entered into contracts to sell munitions to foreign nations, including Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, and Colombia. I wonder how many times Mills voted to make sure the war in Ukraine kept going. This represents a clear conflict of interest, given he serves on the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Mr. Mills has also faced credible accusations he misrepresented his military service. Mr. Mills claimed to have served in elite units such as the 75th Ranger Regiment and to have attended specialized training like sniper school. However, these claims are not supported by his official military personnel file or his DD-214. Furthermore, Mr. Mills' employment application to DynCorp International stated he served in the U.S. Army 75th Ranger Regiment and attended U.S. Army Sniper School, claims which are also not corroborated by his military records. There have also been credible reports calling into question the Bronze Star awarded to Mr. Mills in 2021. When questioned about his Bronze Star, Mr. Mills produced a DA Form 638 recommending him for the award, which included a signature from then Army Brigade Commander Arnold M. Gordon Bray. However, retired Brigadier General Bray disputes having signed such a recommendation for Mr. Mills. We actually spoke to General Bray, who acknowledged he did not physically sign the form, nor did he read it prior to his signature being affixed to Form 638. Furthermore, Numerous individuals who served with Mr. Mills have disputed his assertions he was involved in their rescue or provided aid to them of any kind. This type of stolen valor dishonors the sacrifices of all warfighters who bravely defend our nation and undermines public trust in our armed forces and the House. This year, Mr. Mills, a married man who has faced multiple credible accusations of having committed crimes against women whom he had romantic relationships with, including allegedly physically assaulting a woman and allegedly threatening to release intimate photographs and videos of another. Mr. Mills' service in the U.S. House of Representatives, and particularly on committees which relate to his private business dealings, does not reflect credibility on the House. Given the gravity of these allegations against Mr. Mills, the clear conflicts of interest and potential illegality presented by his business dealings, and the potential implications on U.S. national security and foreign policy, we urge you to take action to remove Mr. Mills from the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on Foreign Affairs. We simply cannot have an alleged arms dealer with foreign business sitting on the Committee on Foreign Affairs, nor can we have stolen valor represented on the Committee on Armed Services. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. But what's even more shocking is that not a damn thing is being done about it, and they continue to cover it up. Now, when all of this started being exposed on the internet, Cory Mills, you know what he did? Rather than addressing it, he went and locked down his Twitter accounts, and he turned off his replies. So nobody can reply to him. Nobody can call him out on Twitter unless you retweet something that he does and then you tag him in it. Now, also confirming this backroom deal, my boy, Tim Burchett. Dadgummit, Tim Burchett blows the lid off this backroom deal, which saved Cory Mills and Stacey Plaskett.
Vote series to censor Delegate Stacey Plaskett. She's the one that was received a sizable contribution from Epstein, which apparently is legal. I'm not sure, but she also is the one who was texting with him during a committee hearing, getting instructions on how to better attack Trump from Epstein, sending her the text. And so she's on some pretty powerful committees, and that just tells you how corrupt this place is. But the disgusting thing about it was 4 Republicans chose not to vote. 3 Republicans voted present, and 3 Republicans voted no. So it failed. And what they did was they cut a deal. They cut a deal on an ethics vote on a Republican, and that's just wrong. If everybody ought to just stand on their own. If it were truly, we don't care whose party these sex offenders and all this other stuff are in, we're going after them. Then we start cutting deals. To me, it's really disgusting. I get disgusted about some things, but this is one that's really, really bad. You've got some people on there who are chairmen of committees and things like that. And that's the kind of people we put in leadership. It's bogus and it stinks. And the first opportunity I get to speak to our leadership, I will give them a piece of my mind, and I doubt it will go anywhere. But they're the most sewer-dwelling people, some of these folks, not all of them, but some of them are. It's just disgusting. It really is. Anyway, still, thank y'all for sending me here. We got to keep fighting. We quit, and we lose the whole deal. Remember Reagan said we're one generation away from losing our country. Folks, we're one vote series away from losing our country. We got to wake up. God's given us an incredible gift, and we're just blowing it. It won't be around for everybody. It says for their grandkids. It might not be around for your kids. It might not make it to the end of the year. Let's take our country back, folks.
People like Tim Burchett are the people who give me hope. Because, yeah, a lot of politicians are corrupt. There is a lot of dirty stuff that happens in Washington, D.C. But every now and then, somebody slips through. Somebody like Tim has the power to slip through. And I really feel like that should give you guys motivation to continue moving forward. Now, the other night I was talking about this subject with John, about the idea of being frustrated. You know, you have every right to be frustrated about how dirty Washington, D.C. is. But the level that you allow that to control your mind is up to you. I have a unique outlook on the world, and it's largely because of my experience as an addict. One of the tenets that I live by is understanding and accepting that a lot of what happens in the world is outside of my control. I am not in control. I am not the main character. However, in my own story, I am the main character, and what I can control is what I do, how I think, how I feel, how I react. Nobody else gets to control how I feel or what I do or what I say or the decisions that I make. And so I continue every single day to wake up with the goal of doing the next right thing. And for me, that includes exposing people like Stacey Plaskett, exposing people like Cory Mills. And I hope that through these reports that it empowers you guys to continue to do the next right thing as well in your own life, in your own community, because I do not think that we are too far gone here in the United States. I think that it's bad, but at the same time, I also believe that we are closer than we've ever been in my lifetime and perhaps in your lifetime to getting this sorted out, to solving it, and to holding these people accountable. Now, I wouldn't be any kind of a reporter if I didn't also report on what Cory Mills is saying about what happened today, or yesterday, rather. So Cory Mills, with his replies off, puts out a canned comment and says, yesterday, along with most of my colleagues, I voted to censure Democrat Delegate Stacey Plaskett for being coached by Jeffrey Epstein through text messages during an anti-Trump committee hearing. Her conduct was unethical and warranted censure. I believe every one of my colleagues should have voted to censure her, and those who didn't should be confronted individually. It has been made obvious to me that in recent months, Democrats have been using me as a political pawn. So with full transparency, my team and I fully expected that a vote to censure me would be brought to the floor yesterday. We prepared for it, but it never came, which surprised us as much as anyone else. And let me be perfectly clear, there was no backroom deal, no negotiation, no quid pro quo of any kind that would have forced the Democrats to stand down on that vote against me. Anyone pushing that narrative is just wrong. My focus to defend America, Americans, and American interests remains unchanged. I did not and will not compromise my vote or my integrity to submit to the left's political games. He did, again, however, refuse to vote for the censure of Ilhan Omar. He was one of the people that sunk that vote. It doesn't matter to me that Cory Mills didn't voted to censure Stacey Plaskett because there were others who clearly didn't. I want to hear from them. I want to know why it is they made this arrangement. I want to know if they were forced into this by leadership. I want to know if they were promised something. But clearly there is a reckoning that needs to be had and comments need to be made. Anna Paulina Luna replies and says, turn your comments on, Mills. You're saying there are no backroom deals. This is the second censure you've been wrapped up in, and once again, it was dropped, followed by a pressure campaign demanding members stop talking about it. I wonder why. That's very interesting. You should also apologize. A referral to the Ethics Committee is where things go to die. The Republican Party does not support this kind of behavior, nor should we be silenced for calling it out. Stop bullshitting the American people and Florida residents. Get your crap together, not in Congress. All right. Now, Stacey Plaskett also gave a banger of an interview on CNN where she addresses her conversation and relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I'm not going to play her comments from Congress because she basically says, that she talks herself up and she says, I was just talking to a constituent. But here on this interview with CNN, she responds to the failed censure against her. And she also manages to turn what should have been a victory lap into another embarrassing moment because the host of the program, Pamela Brown, was forced to remind her of a basic fact, because when Stacey Plaskett was communicating with Jeffrey Epstein, as I have repeatedly mentioned, he was already a sex offender. Everybody knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a sex offender. The Virgin Islands is not that big of a place. Everybody knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a sex offender. There were already books that were written about Jeffrey Epstein. His case was famous down in Florida. Everybody was aware. Take a listen to Stacey Plaskett try to talk her way out of being a buddy of Jeffrey Epstein.
I believe that Jeffrey Epstein had information, and I was going to get information to get at the truth. Having a friendship with him is not something that I would deem to have. And so I'm just looking forward. I'm moving forward. And I think that that's what we as American people should do, is move forward. If individuals are not involved in illegal activity, extending his criminal enterprise or his financial enterprise or all of those things, I think that we need to look at what people are doing moving forward.
Wait, let me just better understand that. What is that point? Because at the time he was a known sex offender and it had been detailed all the sexual abuse.
There are a lot of people who have done a lot of crimes, and as a prosecutor, you get information from people where you can.
Wow. That's like an Ilhan Omar, some people did something moment. I am also shocked that CNN even reminded her of that fact. Wait a second. Let me just back it up. He didn't do anything illegal. He was a sex offender. Everybody knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a child trafficker. What are you talking about, Stacey Plaskett? So there is a very, very good soundbite that I, for one, am going to be saving. I'm not going to be letting that one fall off the face of the earth. A couple of things from Rumble. Wounds Are Us says, do you think Bondi's new epiphany will keep her out of Fox hair and makeup and at her desk working? Probably not. You know, the thing is, I think that the administration sends her to Fox to do those interviews. And so, yes, no, I don't think she's going to stop. I think that all of the members of the administration that goes out to do these interviews, I believe that they are sanctioned and also encouraged by the administration. But what's most important would be the career officials at the DOJ that are chosen to work on this case, to do the investigations, and then to write the indictments, well, to bring the evidence before the grand jury and get the indictments. Those are the people who are really going to be doing the work. 417 Patriot says, finally home from Florida and catching you live. We went home from GART, got our girls, and flew out to Fort Myers for 5 days. Awesome. Good stuff. It was so great to see you, and always glad I at least got to say hi to Lisa. Awesome. It was great to see you guys as well. Thank you so much. Also, contrary to her belief, I definitely was there to see her. Effing love her. She's a real one for sure. That is so sweet. Yes. I wish that Lisa would have been able to stay the whole time. Next time, I'm going to have to force my daughter to come down here and watch the dogs. Now, this is not the end of this conversation, but real quick before we continue, got a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. All right, if you or someone you love is struggling with high blood sugar and A1C, you need to hear this, because it's well known that expensive medications and popular shots have dangerous side effects. Well, Creator's Bounty has developed the perfect alternative. It's an herbal supplement called Elohe Trim. Elohe Trim is a 100% natural formula that is proven to dramatically lower your blood sugar and A1C. It uses 7 healthy ingredients, no stimulants, no junk. These 7 ingredients would cost you over $150 if you bought them all separately. But this is the best part. You have no bad side effects from taking the supplement, only the good ones. We're talking about sugar cravings gone, inflammation reduced, stable energy all day with 0 crashes. Seriously, most people are getting better results than they did on those harsh medications that a lot of people are taking, but without all of the risks. Elohe Trim is made in the USA at an FDA-registered facility. It's fully tested, and it's backed by a no-questions-asked 90-day money-back guarantee. The friendly folks at Creator's Bounty offer fast and free shipping 5 days a week from Omaha, right here in the United States. You can use that QR code that you see on screen, the link that you see in the chat, or you can get there in any other way that you may. Elohe Trim. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. Now, continuing, Jasmine Crockett, one of the most intelligent members of the Democrat caucus, also stepped in it when she was attempting to smear Republicans over donations made by Jeffrey Epstein. This absolutely blew up in her face. First, though, Northern Pike says, Rooster, did you dive into who really may be doing the work under Pam Bondi? A last-minute Bush-Obama justice, part of the old guard making all the DOJ decisions on how the prosecutions go. Look her up. So, no, I mean, I know several of the people at the DOJ, but I don't know specifically who you're talking about. If you want to send me an email, redpill78@proton.me, I'll be happy to dive into it. But as far as it looks right now, I mean, things seem to be going pretty good at the DOJ. I would imagine that if there are still holdovers that are inside the Department of Justice, there is a plan to suss them out. And also, there may be people who have turned against their former employers so that they can avoid some type of criminal charges in the future. But Jasmine Crockett provided some unintentional comic relief right before the House decided to give Stacey Plaskett a big pass. Now, let's see. Before the censure vote, Crockett took to the House floor and accused the GOP of a double standard by asserting, without any evidence, that Mitt Romney, Lee Zeldin, John McCain, and George W. Bush had all once taken money from Jeffrey Epstein. Take a listen.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly: Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review. This is absolutely ridiculous.
You know what? She's absolutely right. Those FEC filings are public for review, which makes it shocking that her team would simply choose the name Jeffrey Epstein and insinuate that it is the same Jeffrey Epstein, because in actuality, the name may be the same, but the person is completely different. This is somebody named Jeffrey Epstein or somebodies named Jeffrey Epstein, but they're not the Jeffrey Epstein. And when you actually look into Jeffrey Epstein's political donations, 90% of the people and causes that he donated to were all Democrat and left-wing affiliated causes. It's quite clear that Jeffrey Epstein had a preference, and it wasn't for people like any of those that were mentioned. Now, even though those people may have been deep staters, it wasn't Jeffrey Epstein that was donating, certainly not to Lee Zeldin, who is part of the current administration. Now, I would like to also play this clip from Tim Burchett here, where he talks about why Elon Musk was run out of Washington, D.C. And then after that, I want to play a clip for you from Donald Trump, where he addressed Elon Musk in a public event with the Saudis earlier today. Take a listen to Tim here talk about Elon getting to the facts and the heart of why D.C. is so corrupt.
What should happen to the Clintons?
They should be punished. We should get to the bottom of everything. We should find out where the money went. We should find out where the money went when they were down there in that island, not just the Epstein Island, the
Haiti.
Haiti. But too many people got rich off this. Look, Benny, here's how it works. It's just the NGOs, and let's talk about them non-government organizations which are government. Just my bill to defund the Taliban. 1,000 NGOs plus you add the UN. Probably 3,000 NGOs, the money flows, and Elon Musk had it right. And that's why I think both parties shunned themselves from him, because he said, hey, those NGOs, the money flows right back to Washington. And he told me, he said, I think it flows in the pockets of politicians. I mean, you had the ranking member of the committee I serve on that went through the bill to defund the Taliban, which, you know, still waiting in the Senate for them to pass it. All kinds of confusion over there. They're fighting over the NGOs. The money, he told me the money flows right from your pockets to the dadgum NGOs. The NGOs, the money comes right back to Washington in the form of dark money and in the pockets of politicians. That's why you're seeing Republicans go squishy on NGOs, because They're shady as hell. They all are. I mean, if you're...
I mean, this is something that we obviously already know. And I just love hearing Tim Burchett say it. This man is a truth teller.
Involved in it, they are. Not everybody up here is. Some of them are just willing idiots. They just go along to get along, so they know that they'll get their crumbs, and they don't really ask where they come from.
Do you think that that's what Elon found, and that's why he was run out of the city?
That's my theory. That's my theory, ultimately. I think he was getting too close. I don't know if he found the specifics yet, but I'd say he was right on it. He was right on it. And then you don't see the media wrap. And I know I got to get on. I got to go. I got to get out. I got to get to my deal. C-SPAN. I apologize. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. I mean, it's money, it's power, and it's arrogance. All those three things is what runs this town.
So now we already knew that, correct? We already knew that. And is there any wonder why when President Trump came to Washington, D.C., returning to power as the 47th president of the United States, that this is one of the very first things he attempted to address with the closure of USAID and, of course, a number of other non-governmental organizations that were being funded by the United States government. Now, there is a lot more work to do, but unfortunately, so much of that has only been a problem because of actions of Congress. And it has to be the actions of Congress to unravel that Gordian knot. But that's exactly what Elon Musk was pointing to. Now, in relation to my and many others' theories of Donald Trump and Elon Musk's kayfabian relationship, and I will suggest to you again, even perhaps Marjorie Taylor Greene and this spat that they're having right now, here in this speech that President Trump gives, he's talking and he speaks directly to Elon Musk, talking about how he and Elon together worked to let the Democrats humiliate themselves. This all began when Elon Musk claimed without evidence that Donald Trump was in the Epstein files. And then supposedly he and Elon no longer are friends. The Democrats went headfirst into the Epstein files because they believed that Elon knew something they didn't. And now the Democrats are responsible for the release of the Epstein files. And what's happening? They are being humiliated because it's them who are featured in the Epstein files. I think that Donald Trump is directly corroborating right here that this was the plan all along. They together convinced the Democrats to jump headfirst into the shallow end, and now they are holding the bag. Take a listen.
If you think about it, if Kamala, who's the same basic thing, grossly incompetent, he was incompetent, they're all incompetent because
Rebelnator, yes, in a manner of speaking, and we said this at the time, yes, Donald Trump is in files related to Jeffrey Epstein because, of course, they were associated because they both lived in Palm Beach. Donald Trump took those flights to and from Palm Beach to New York. Donald Trump was likely the snitch. He was likely the informant, the dog that didn't bark that got Jeffrey Epstein in trouble in the mid-2000s. So, yeah, he was in the Epstein files, but just not in the way the Democrats thought he was in the Epstein files.
their policies are open borders, men playing in women's sports, transgender for everybody. I mean, they got the worst policy. I don't talk about it too much because if I talk about it, they might change. So, no, I don't talk about it. I tell people, don't talk about it. Wait till 2 weeks before the election and hit the hell out of them. Right? We talked about that, right, Elon? He said, we wait 2 weeks before. It's almost like you're in a war. Don't shoot yet. Don't shoot. Hold your fire. The enemy's rushing. Hold your fire.
And this is also great insight into President Trump's tactics. Again, it's all about timing. The enemy is rushing headlong towards you. You don't shoot until you know you can take them out, until you see the whites of their eyes.
Don't shoot. Okay, now you can go. 2 weeks before. But I watched a guy the other day, a congressman, fighting for men playing in women's sports. And the new weightlifting record for a certain weight was just set. The man was 119 pounds higher than a woman champion who was a phenomenal champion. beat her by 119, and he was an average lifter prior to transitioning. A lot of the Saudis are sitting here saying, what the hell is he talking about transition? They don't do, Yasser, they don't do a lot of transitioning. They're sitting here, the Saudis are saying, what is he talking about? They're saying, what do you mean women are playing against men? No, that doesn't happen, does it? Yeah, it does. These people are crazy.
Anyways, it's all about timing. The art of war, my friends, the art of war. Donald Trump is the master. All right, now, here we have a clip, once more, final clip, I swear, of Tim Burchett. He and, so 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats have once again brought forward a bill that would ban stock trading in Congress. And Tim Burchett goes hard on the corrupt members of Congress, talking about not only the need for this bill, how this practice has negatively affected the American people, how Congress enriched themselves, but he's also very realistic. He says this bill is not going to pass because these people are in love with money too much.
Thank you, Proud Paul. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Brian.
Pilsko, it's not just that he had too much to lose to be involved with them. President Trump is a moral man. President Trump was never involved with those people because that's not the kind of energy that he is involved in with himself. President Trump would never engage in that behavior. And knowing that that's what those people were doing, he stayed clear of it. Blackmail is the currency of Washington, D.C., because the people who can be blackmailed they are amoral. They have no problem sacrificing whatever spirit and soul they may have inside themselves. They allow themselves to be blackmailed, and they go along to get along. President Trump was never that guy. He was never involved because he would never be involved.
Somebody asked me if I was going to wear my jacket up there, and I said, to quote the immortal words of Henry Winkler when he played the Fonz, I always rumble in this jacket, because that's what we're up against. This is a fist fight, folks. Now, first, I guess I need to thank Chairman Stiles and the committee, the House Admin Administration Committee, for taking this up, because I realize what we're up against. I mean, this is, everybody talks about this place being a dadgum swamp. It's not a swamp. A swamp is something cool God created. It filters water. Animal life lives and flourishes around it. This is a sewer. This is created by man, and it needs to stop. We've, for years, Congress has been using hard-working American taxpayers' money to get rich. Dadgum, it's got to stop. America knows what the heck's going on. Everybody wants to knock Pelosi. Heck, she's not even in the top 10. Get on that Unusual Whales site. This is pathetic, folks. We all know what's going on. Congress knows what the hell's going on, and it needs to stop. This body has been enriching itself on the taxpayers' dime for too dadgum long, and it's got to stop. This place is crooked and is crooked as a dog's leg. That's an old East Tennessee saying, but it's the truth, and it needs to stop. America knows what's going on. We're in committee meetings. We hear things before y'all do. We can make those connections. When you see a member of this body making 400, 500, 600 trades a year, you know something's wrong. Everybody ought to do like I do. I got my buddy Tommy Siler who invested in my mutual fund. I ended up having to cash it out because my daughter's going to school. I'm not a wealthy man. But look, this thing is broken, and it needs to be fixed. And this is the right avenue to do it. And I want to say something. I'm going to get these guys mad at me, but I really don't care because they can't vote in my district. This thing ain't going to pass. If we're going to pass something in the House, and then guess what? The Senate will either, one, not take it up, or they'll come back in righteous indignation and say, oh, we need to make this stronger, something totally ridiculous, and they'll send it back to us. This is a scam that's being played on the American public, and it needs to stop. Let's quit with this nonsense. Let's give America a reason to trust Congress for once in our miserable lives. This is our chance to stand up and say, we hear what you're saying, America. We're going to fix this dadgum problem. But we probably won't do it. And I'll remain ticked off the rest of the day because of this. And it needs to stop. I want to thank all these folks, really. I joke around about it. You want to talk about something that, we all working together? Dadgummit, this is the issue. This is the issue where Democrats and Republicans. Dadgummit, if I can stand up here with these two,
Yeah, these two. I mean, you know, people back in East Tennessee are going, what in the heck's Burchett doing sitting next to Proud Paul, for goodness sakes? Well, I'm not going to beat her in her district, and she sure as heck ain't going to come down to East Tennessee and beat me. But this is an issue that America's united on. We ought to get behind this thing. You all in the press, it would make a hell of a lot of sense.
Okay. So I love that Tim Burchett is so realistic, and I love that he consistently tells the truth, and he always fights for what's right for the American people. I think he's an inspiration, and if I could vote for him, I absolutely would. All right, now, interestingly enough, now that the Epstein files have passed, Cory Booker is calling for Chuck Schumer to be removed from Senate leadership. Of course, Chuck Schumer is very old. He's been the Senate minority leader and the Senate majority leader for quite some time. And the opening of the government under Chuck Schumer's leadership and watch is something that a lot of Democrats are very upset about because they believed they had leverage by keeping the government closed. Unfortunately for them, it also allowed for many different audits to take place. We've gone over all of the findings of fraud, waste, and abuse that occurred during that brief shutdown period. And now Cory Booker is saying we've got to get rid of Chuck Schumer. Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, it's time for us to step up. The stage is waiting for us to lead. Sounds like Cory Booker wants to be the next minority leader. We've got a number of others who have also expressed their wish to step up to the plate and become the new leader. That would be Ro Khanna of California, Ayanna Pressley, Mr. Clean of whatever state she's from, Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, Delia Ramirez of Illinois, and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. And Ro Khanna here says, Senator Schumer, no longer effective, should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop health care premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? Disingenuous argument. Schumer may not deserve to be in leadership, but I don't think a damn one of them deserve to be in leadership. All of them are crooked as a dog's leg, to use the phrase coined by my good man Tim Burchett back there. It is entirely possible for Congress to get on top of skyrocketing premiums and ending the Affordable Care Act, ending the incentive that these insurance companies have to continue bilking the American government and the taxpayer by proxy is the next thing that President Trump has tasked both the House and the Senate with taking care of. Hopefully, they'll be able to get that done because a lot of people are about to lose their insurance, and a lot of people don't even have insurance because it's too expensive to have it as it is. All right, now, it would appear that FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, has just announced through a letter that was sent to executives of BBC, NPR, and PBS that the FCC is now going to be launching an investigation, or rather they have already launched an investigation into the British Public Broadcasting's misleading edits of President Trump's speech from January 6th. Carr wrote the letter to Tim Davie, the Director General of BBC, Catherine Marr, the CEO of NPR, and Paula Kerger, the President and CEO of PBS. The Federal Communications Chairman has included PBS and NPR in this investigatory letter because the two outlets distribute BBC programming here in the United States, and not a one of them said anything about this malicious edit when it came out. He said the BBC spliced together one portion of the speech with an entirely separate portion of the speech that came 54 minutes later, and in doing so, the BBC program depicts President Trump voicing a sentence that, in fact, he never uttered. That would appear to meet the very definition of publishing a materially false and damaging statement. He also said that the misleading edits of the president's speech received widespread condemnation, and President Trump himself believes the edits were so damaging that he sued the BBC. He's seeking up to $5 million in damages. Davie, as well as the BBC CEO of News, Deborah Tunis, said that they both will be resigning as a result of that speech being edited. Ofcom is the United Kingdom's telecom regulator. They also called on the BBC to look into the issue, but I mean, that's like the fox looking into the henhouse. But they are said to be independently investigating whether the BBC has engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct. I can save them millions of dollars in a pointless investigation. They are 100% involved and guilty of misleading and deceptive conduct, because that is the very definition of it. It would be as if somebody took two different sections of one of my shows and spliced them together and said, look, Zak Paine says we should nuke Washington, D.C. or something like that, even though I never said that, even in that fake statement right there. So this is good news. I'm glad to see the regulatory bodies of the United States flexing the muscle that we have right now while we've got the opportunity to do so. Also, great news from the Department of Justice. A top deputy who worked for former special counsel Jack Smith, former special counsel improperly appointed Jack Smith, has just been criminally referred to the Justice Department for obstruction of Congress. Jack Smith, of course, appointed back in 2022, shortly after President Trump announced that he was going to be running for president. Jim Jordan is the one putting forward this criminal referral, and the man being referred is Thomas Wyndham. He was a former senior assistant special counsel to Jack Smith, and the DOJ said he refused to answer every question during a deposition before the House Judiciary Committee when they had subpoenaed him to come on in and give them his full attention. So Jim Jordan said, today, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jordan referred Thomas Wyndham, former special assistant counsel to Jack Smith, to the DOJ for criminal prosecution after Wyndham declined to answer nearly every single one of the committee's questions in a deposition, citing various and shifting justifications. As a senior assistant to special counsel Smith, Wyndham possesses unique firsthand information about the work out of that office. Yet, despite being given express authorization by DOJ on two separate occasions, Wyndham declined to answer questions during his deposition about topics necessary and relevant to the inquiry. Those topics include knowledge of a February 2021 proposal that J.P. Cooney brought to the FBI to investigate President Trump and the individuals within his orbit, interactions with and materials obtained by the J6 committee, information related to the surveillance of Representatives Scott Perry and the seizure of his cell phone, information related to how many other members of Congress were investigated as part of Arctic Frost and the Jack Smith investigation, and communications with FBI officials related to potential evidence in the possession of the Willard Hotel. Now, looking forward into this investigation, because it's not only Tom Wyndham, it is also an investigation that's now ongoing into Jack Smith for possible violations of the Hatch Act and illegal political activity. Special counsel Jack Smith opened this the Office of Special Counsel, ironically enough, opened this investigation after Senator Tom Cotton earlier had sent a letter alleging Jack Smith's actions politically harmed President Trump during the 2024 election. That's obviously what they were intending to do. So it looks like slowly but surely we are beginning to wind all of these people up into a variety of different criminal investigations. I can't wait to see where everything goes. Now, right here in the deposition that Thomas Wyndham sat for, Julie Kelly says that this criminal referral shows that the early stages of the J6 investigation was moved to Jack Smith's team after his appointment, and Jim Jordan is accusing Wyndham of committing a felony for refusing to answer these questions. Right here, Thomas Wyndham's refusal to answer questions and properly make privilege assertions during his deposition obstructed by the committee's investigation. Despite the authorization that Wyndham had received from the DOJ, meaning he could answer any question that they had asked, he declined nearly every single question. The only reason Thomas Wyndham would do something like that is if he believes he is criminally liable for the illegal actions taken by Jack Smith and the team during that investigation. So this is not going to go well for Tom Wyndham, and felony is obviously something that could ruin his career and put him in prison for some time. Let me say thank you to Northern Pike. He says, Desiree Lee Grace, still working in the shadows with Bondi and Todd Blanche. In the open, Harmeet Dillon, I don't have the faith in these people. Sorry, Rooster, maybe you can dig deeper. I will absolutely dig deeper into Desiree Lee Grace. I really like Harmeet Dillon. I think she's been doing a great job over there at the Civil Rights Division. I mean, I think she's doing great. I think that Todd Blanche is doing a good job, too. So, yeah, I'll look into Desiree Lee Grace. Let me make a note real quick for myself. There we go. All right, thank you to Miss Echo over on Pilled for the cookie, and thank you to the Canadian for the EMP. Son, I appreciate it. I didn't even realize that was an EMP earlier, but now I see that it's glowing. So big ups to you, and thank you so much for the support. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog says, can you clear up the chat? Can you clear up the chat? Are you Canadian? Oh, am I Canadian? No. Are people asking if I'm Canadian? No, but I'm born in Michigan. Born and raised in Michigan. So that's as close as you can get to being Canadian without actually being Canadian. All right. Now, in terms of the recent subpoenas that just went out, one of the people who received them for the larger criminal conspiracy that is being investigated down in Florida, one of those people is Jim Comey. So this is outside of his current case that he is facing in the Eastern District of Virginia. Jim Comey has to supply the information requested from this subpoena by November 20th. That is tomorrow. We have yet to see Jim Comey present anything of note that has been accepted by the grand jury down there in Florida. And I do look forward to seeing what Jim Comey brings forward, because this case is obviously centering on Russiagate, the conspiracy to destroy President Trump before he even became president. It wraps up not only Comey, but obviously Obama, Hillary, George Soros, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, McCabe, all of the big players in the Russia hoax. Hillary Clinton tried to tie Donald Trump to Russian intelligence because she needed to distract from her email server, her private, unsecured bathroom email server with special access program intelligence, top secret information, a whole host of things that she was not supposed to have in an unsecured setting. This conspiracy that is now being investigated in Florida started as election interference so that they could further Hillary Clinton's goal of becoming president. Then after that, it became the Obama plan because Hillary lost the election. But the entire thing is a seditious conspiracy. They were attempting to overthrow the government of the United States. This is from the mouth of DNI Tulsi Gabbard. It kept going. It progressed into the Mueller witch hunt. It turned into the fake Ukrainian impeachment. It culminated in the raid on Mar-a-Lago, and they were there to seize Russiagate documents, which proved that this grand conspiracy took place. It was the evidence of their crimes and related to the classified documents case that was later filed by Jack Smith, the improperly appointed special counsel. This grand jury that we are waiting to see the results of begins in January. And in the meantime, you've got more than 30 defendants who now have to comply with these subpoenas by tomorrow. Among them, Jim Comey is one. These are specific to Jim Comey lying to Congress about his media leaks of classified information. It's a so-called process crime. It's got that 5-year statute of limitations. It had to be brought in Virginia because the crime took place in Washington. He was testifying in Washington from his home in Virginia. It is, of course, an unfavorable jurisdiction, but it's a vehicle for the prosecution to make the public documents giving evidence of Comey's other crimes that may come forward. If Comey committed crimes in other jurisdictions, those indictments can come in those other jurisdictions, and then we can bring those cases in other jurisdictions. But it eventually is going to get rolled into this grand conspiracy. Just because Jim Comey is currently facing the charges in the Eastern District of Virginia doesn't mean it's going to stay up there. First of all, Comey leaked classified information, which was then used to appoint Robert Mueller. And that goal of his was the impeachment of Donald Trump. He was trying to overthrow the president. Comey then lied to Congress about this cover-up. But because it's all part of that greater grand conspiracy, and the case of this grand conspiracy is going to be brought down in Florida, I think that likely we're going to see Comey's case get moved and rolled into that grand conspiracy case. But we've also, on a number of occasions, talked about the possibility of superseding indictments for Comey lying to Congress about his knowledge of, and more importantly, his involvement with, that Hillary Clinton plan, because we've now gotten these newly released Comey notes that were submitted into evidence by U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan. The Clinton plan to impugn and smear Donald Trump with the Russia hoax is the origin of the grand conspiracy. and Jim Comey was placed squarely in the center of it. So 2 things to watch for: Jim Comey's case getting rolled into the grand conspiracy case and superseding indictments coming against Comey. I can't wait to see what evidence they are asked to present to the grand jury. My friends, I am so excited about what's happening down here. Now we're going to move on from this section into another section about a series of decisions that are being made by radical activist judges all around the country. First of all, earlier today, we're opening up the judicial section with a follow-up to the Jim Comey case. I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. So earlier today, Lindsay Halligan and the team were in court, and the judge that is overseeing the indictment of Jim Comey was questioning Lindsay Halligan about the case, and he wanted to know if Lindsay Halligan is a puppet for President Trump. This is Judge Zak Paine, again, a Biden appointee, questioning Lindsay Halligan on this hearing today, where hearing is being brought because Comey is obviously seeking to have the indictment against him dismissed. We have the grand jury indictment. We know that he was indicted on 2 counts, the false statements and the obstruction. But what has come out as a result of these hearings is that there was originally a 3-count indictment against Jim Comey. However, the jury initially rejected one of those charges against James Comey. So then Halligan and the team re-edited the charges. They brought the 2 counts that the jury seemed to not have any problem with, and they voted on that 2-count indictment. And that's why we have the case that we have currently. So when Halligan removed that initial charge and then signed off on the 2-count indictment, she told the judge that the grand jury was never presented with the new indictments. Prosecutor Tyler Lemons also told the court earlier today that the final indictments were identical to the indictment that was already approved by the grand jury. So the insinuation by that other lower magistrate judge that Lindsay Halligan and the team had done something improper is essentially now a non-starter. Judge Zak Paine asked Comey's lawyer, Michael Dreeben, if Halligan is a puppet or a stalking horse for Trump. Of course, he would believe that she is. Dreeben responded that he would not use those words, but that his team believed Halligan was operating at the direction of Trump rather than independently. Dreeben also said that Trump had a years-long vendetta against Comey, who has been a vocal opponent of Trump since the president fired him in 2017. Now, there is no ruling from this hearing. The judge is obviously thinking about this. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. But the important thing here is that the grand jury never saw that final indictment for Comey. And the grand jury, according to the magistrate judge, was likely to have seen lawyer-client confidential privileged material. And we have confirmation that that didn't happen. The new indictment wasn't a new indictment, Tyler Lemons said during this hearing. And the judge had quickly called Halligan, who was the only prosecutor, to present the case to the grand jury, to the lectern, and he asked her to confirm that the entire grand jury was never presented with the altered indictment. Am I correct? No, you're not, Halligan said, adding that there was one additional grand juror in the magistrate's courtroom and quoted her back and forth with the judge. I'm familiar with the transcript, Zak Paine said. Zak Paine also directed the DOJ to respond in a filing today by 5 p.m., and that filing is in regards to the revelation that Halligan hadn't presented the charges that Comey is facing to the full grand jury for approval. Comey was charged in September with the charges of obstruction and making false statements, but as we have learned, the grand jury had already seen those various indictments, those charges being brought by the Department of Justice. So when they voted without the other charge that they had rejected, it was essentially the same thing. So this is not selective. This is not vindictive. This is not being brought because Lindsay Halligan is simply being told to by President Trump, because this is about keeping people honest. This is about having somebody like James Comey face the music. there are undoubtedly other things in the form of indictments that can be brought against James Comey. I believe that they will in the future. But we need to have a sort of political test case. We need to bring these things, and we need to have James Comey held to account in one form or another. Ashley D., thank you very much for joining as a monthly supporter over there on Rumble. I really do appreciate it. Lemons undoubtedly wants to make sure that the judge understands one thing, that the indictment against James Comey was about laws that he broke. This is not about having been directed by the President of the United States. Well, the judge is going to have questions about that later after he receives the reply from the DOJ team today. We'll wait and we'll report on that tomorrow. Now, continuing with bad judges, a Clinton judge has ordered public schools in North Texas to remove the 10 Commandments from display. This was a federal judge. The decision came on Tuesday, and it orders 14 public schools in North Texas to remove the 10 Commandments. U.S. District Judge Orlando Luis Garcia, appointed by Bill Clinton, said the Texas law violates the Establishment Clause. Now, the anti-American ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of several Texas families who seek to remove the 10 Commandments from these public schools. The lawsuit was filed after Texas passed a law requiring schools to display the 10 Commandments. Now, the ACLU was very happy with the judge's decision. Once again, a federal court has recognized that the Constitution bars public schools from forcing religious scripture on students. I'd like to just go on record and say this is not forcing religious scripture on students. This is merely a display. The students can choose to read it or not. That is part of being free and having your own personal liberty. This decision is a victory for religious liberty and a reminder that government officials shouldn't play favorites with faith. Now, undoubtedly, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is going to appeal this decision. He is suing the rogue ISD officials who disregarded the will of Texas voters. Those rogue ISD officials and board members blatantly disregarded the will of Texas voters who expect the legal and moral heritage of our state to be displayed in accordance with the law. This lawsuit makes clear that no district may ignore Texas law without consequence. So we'll see how this goes. It is not the last thing that we're going to hear about it. We also have another bad legal decision, this one from another crazed left-wing judge, Dabney Friedrich. She has astoundingly ruled that President Trump is not allowed to clean the building next to the White House. So essentially, she is saying that President Trump does not have the authority to beautify Washington, D.C. She is definitely a leftist. She has a pretty horrible record. She's responsible for ruling that 1512 obstruction of an official proceeding felony could be used against January 6ers. And this felony allowed the DOJ to place a lot of innocent people in jail before their bogus trials. Judge Friedrich's husband also worked with Andrew Weissman and Robert Mueller on the Enron case in the early 2000s. She's pretty deeply connected to deep state royalty in Washington, D.C., and years later, she was placed over another Mueller case. Sidney Powell noted this conflict back in 2019, where she said Judge Dabney Langhorne Friedrich is none other than the wife of Matthew Friedrich, one of the three villains in my book. Matthew Friedrich is a longtime friend and colleague of Andrew Weissman and Robert Mueller. They bonded on the Enron task force, what one writer, Mark Jacoby, the wife of Fusion GPS's Glenn Simpson, not long ago called the glue that binds. Judge Dabney Langhorne Friedrich, from a Virginia blue blood family, has been appointed to various positions by Presidents Bush and Obama, Uniparty. Unfortunately, no one informed President Trump of her full background, and he appointed her to the federal bench. Bummer. Friedrich's victories on the Enron task force catapulted him to Attorney General Mukasey's acting assistant attorney general of the criminal division of the Department of Justice, from whence he immediately rushed to indict Senator Ted Stevens. Matt Friedrich micromanaged that prosecution to precision, and it was corrupted to its core. The entire case had to be thrown out, and the special prosecutor appointed by Judge Emmett Sullivan to investigate the Department of Justice found some particular things. intentional, systematic, and pervasive misconduct within the department. Weissman, Friedrich, and Mueller are the deep state. Mueller is the insurance policy of which Strzok, Page, and McCabe wrote. And it appears that everything Judge Friedrich touches is connected to the deep state and goes against America. Why, in their right mind, would anybody deny President Trump the right to clean a building that is right next to the White House? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm certain, again, just as all these cases end up going before the appeals court, this is not the last we are going to hear from it. Now, we also have another bad decision from a judge. This time, another anti-Christian judge who has ruled that a mother is prevented from talking to her own daughter about the Bible or taking her daughter to church. This is in relation to a child custody hearing. Child custody hearings, child custody cases are never easy. And this ruling from a custody order in Maine has firmly decided that this mother is not allowed to engage in telling her own daughter about Christ or taking her to church to learn about it or even teaching her about the Bible. Her name is Emily Bickford. Her daughter Ava turns 13 in January. The father is Matt Bradeen, and the two were never married. Emily has retained primary custody while the father has visitation rights. Emily, of course, is a Christian and has worked to provide a foundation of faith for her daughter. That's something that her father opposes. He has been described as hating Christianity. Bradeen took this issue to court, and he found a former ACLU president who had become a judge, and the ruling was what it was. The judge issued a custody order that can only be viewed as hostile to Christianity. The order forbids Ava from associating with any of her church friends. She can't attend church. She can't go to any Christian events. And it even prevents Ava from studying the Bible, religious philosophy, or discussing her own faith with her own mother. Ava is also not allowed to participate in Christian holiday events such as Christmas. Now, according to the Liberty Council, the mother and daughter had been attending Calvary Chapel. This is an evangelical Christian church in Portland, Maine, for 3.5 years. Ava shared her excitement with her father over her upcoming baptism, and that's when the trouble began. Instead of being excited for his daughter and respecting her religious liberty, even if his views differ, he engaged this leftist judge and then brought in a Marxist former sociology professor from California as a witness. The witness testified that Calvary Chapel and any church that believes in the Bible is a cult that causes psychological harm to children. This is absolutely one of the most astounding rulings that I've ever seen. Now, the order, hold on. The judge found that Emily is a fit parent, except for the fact that she's a Christian. The judge mocked Ava and Emily's faith by purposefully refusing to capitalize the word God, something that I've never seen, the Liberty Council said. The judge even chastised Emily for allowing the church pastor to pray for Ava. And the judge ruled that Emily could not take Ava to any church unless Matt approves, the father approves. And Matt has steadfastly refused to accept any church that they might attend. The order is extremely intrusive. Ava cannot associate with her church friends. If Ava meets a new friend outside of Calvary and that person begins attending Calvary, Ava has to cut ties with that friend. Ava can't go to church mass. She can't even celebrate Christmas, Easter, or any other Christian event or celebration at any church anywhere in the country. That includes going to weddings, funerals, or hospital visits with anybody that would be associated with Calvary Chapel. Ava cannot have contact or participation with any religious organization, which would include Salvation Army, or a food bank that's doing a soup kitchen, a homeless shelter, even a crisis pregnancy center. Ava can't read the Bible or any religious literature or be exposed to any religious philosophy. And Matt Bradeen is using the court's custody order to insist that Emily cannot read the Bible or learn anything about the Christian faith. So this order has cut this child out of an essential source of not only emotional support, but also moral grounding, and forced her to lose all of her friends at probably one of the most societally developmental periods of her life. And last Thursday, the Liberty Council presented oral arguments before the Maine Supreme Court to overturn this draconian and satanic, frankly, order. The majority of justices said the order is hostile towards religion and that it used a nuclear option by taking all decision-making away from an unquestionably fit parent regarding the religious upbringing of her daughter. So now they are awaiting the decision of the Maine Supreme Court. I cannot imagine that they're going to allow it to stand in any form. Real quick, Northern Pike says, Zach, I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm just hanging out in the ether trying to help the USA before I go on a new journey. Amen, brother. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate the support. Lee Walden says, I have lived 70 years and am a common man with a good upbringing thanks to the Internet of Things. I'm always learning. That said, it seems like the dark forces are increasing, like the Ghostbusters. I wouldn't say that they're increasing. I would say that the mask has come off. They've been there for a long time. The dark forces have been there. But the mask is coming off because they recognize that they're losing. And so they are no longer trying to put up a pretense. They've gotten to that point where they know that in order to have any movement at all, they've got to be as open and obvious as possible. All right, now, outrage at another judicial decision. This time, a judge has released 2 murder suspects with no bail. And you probably can guess it was in California. Listen to this. This is also the San Francisco Bay Area, so probably no surprise. Actually, is there, I think there may be a local news clip. Yes, right here. Let's go to this. Okay, so just to give you the foundations of this case. Actually, okay, so Judge Hector Ramon freed a man named Vicente Aguilera Chavez on October 31st, did not ask him to post any bail. Then during a hearing a week ago, he released another man by the name of Augustin Sandoval on his own recognizance. Both men are charged with a 2017 nightclub shooting that killed 21-year-old Edu Valiz Salgado and then wounded another man in Santa Clara County. This has been a cold case for a couple of years, but detectives in the city of Sunnyvale identified these 2 guys last year. Now, these are obviously very severe charges. They're charged with attempted murder and actual murder. And for some reason, Judge Ramon released them back out into the community, did not require them any bail. The district attorney for Santa Clara County, Jeff Rosen, told Fox News that the 2 accused killers are just now walking around free in the community. He said the odds of reoffense or fleeing from justice just doubled. People's lives ride on those odds. This is outside the bounds of what's acceptable, and it's dangerous to the public. Let's take a look. Right here, this is Judge Hector Ramon, and this is Vicente Aguilar Chavez. Now, the other case right here, let's take a look. Oh, no, it's the same one. Hold on. I thought they had a different link here. 5858. It is the same. It's the same link. Sorry about that. All right. So, yeah, I think that they're probably not going to want to stick around for their inevitable trial for murder and attempted murder. Prosecutors argued in court filings that the judge is obviously gambling with public safety. Aguilera has avoided arrest for a number of years, and they asked that Ramon reconsider his decision, but the judge has refused. Defense attorneys for both of these guys argued their clients were not involved in the shooting, and they had not been in trouble for the last several years. They also insisted that neither man poses a risk to the community, neither was going to be a flight risk, and so they should remain free. And this is what the judge does with murder suspects. This is not the kind of thing that you want to see, but it is something that we've come to expect in places like California. Here is the local district attorney commenting on this case.
I'm outraged. I'm outraged that Judge Ramon would release such a violent offender simply back to our streets.
very concerned for the safety of our community. Shocked, really.
Repeat offenders, but Judge Ramon is a repeat offender. He has a pattern of releasing repeat offenders back into our communities.
The DA says if there was ever a poster child for being held without bail, it's Aguilera.
This is a case where somebody charged with first-degree murder with a gun for the benefit of a criminal street gang who had strike offenses before this murder and strike offenses after the murder, and was sent to prison on other charges before the murder. And my concern is for everybody in our community that this individual could hurt.
I'm outraged. I'm outraged.
I think everybody should be outraged. This is an exact example of why a judge should be impeached and removed from the bench. You cannot give any better example than that. Now, I told you yesterday about CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood being labeled as foreign terror organizations in the state of Texas. Well, the Council on American Islamic Relations has just responded. They are threatening a massive lawsuit to stop themselves from being designated, along with the Muslim Brotherhood, as terror groups. Greg Abbott responds by saying, "That's great. The lawsuit will open doors to all of their financial transactions and fundings, to all of their dealings and misdeeds. The Attorney General will have a heyday." So now it remains to be seen whether or not they're going to be stupid enough to file suit, because that's going to open everything for them to get a look inside. We'll see what happens. All right, now we also have a extremely interesting clip. Former CIA spy and whistleblower John Kiriakou gives us a little bit of insight into the situation that we witnessed several months ago in Iran. He says that he has a source who said he witnessed the Israeli government essentially threatening President Trump, saying, "We've got nukes, and if you don't hit Iran and take out that nuclear enrichment site, then we will use our nukes against Iran, and a lot more people will die as a result."
The reason, though, I'm told, that Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran was that the Israelis said, for the first time, if you don't bomb Iran to take out these deep bunkers, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And they had never threatened that before. And so Trump said, bombing Iran might actually save us from the start of World War III if it keeps the Israelis from using nuclear weapons.
So according to your source, the Israelis told the President of the United States that if he did not use the United States military power to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, Israel, acting on its own, would use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Kiriakou. Sorry, Kiriakou.
Do you see why there's a problem with that statement, John?
Yeah.
Because they've never admitted that they've had them.
That's right.
So you're telling me that...
Well, but we all know they've got them.
They just admitted to the President of the United States that they have nuclear weapons, and we still do not have them in the IAEA treaty.
I mean, if Israeli nuclear whistleblowers are to be believed, yeah, they've had them. They started working on them in the 50s. They got them around the late 60s or the early 70s. Look at Mordechai Vanunu.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't charged for treason for nothing.
That's a guy who they hid in Rome with the honeypot?
Yeah.
Yeah, 86.
The reason, though.
So obviously, that's a huge problem that any nation on earth would blackmail the United States into an act of war like that. However, it goes to show you the tremendous calculus that President Trump engaged in to come to the decision that we needed to take out that Iranian nuclear facility. If you'll also remember, we warned the Iranians. We told them, hey, you better get all your people out of there because we're going to be taking those sites out. And we don't want a whole bunch of people to die. And that's exactly what they did. So I think John Kiriakou is absolutely correct. What President Trump did avoided World War III. And it also goes to show you that you may have an opinion on something, but you never know what's actually happening in the back rooms in Washington, D.C. President Trump is the only man who has all of the information. And the decisions that he makes are based upon things that perhaps you have never even considered. I have never heard one person suggest that the Israelis blackmailed President Trump into committing the bombings on those Iranian nuclear facilities that we saw. I saw a lot of people saying Donald Trump is just doing the bidding of Israel because he's controlled by Israel. But what he actually did, if this is to be believed, is he saved the world from entering into World War III. And I cannot think of something that is more noble than that. President Trump has not only ended 8 wars all around the world, but he also potentially stopped the entirety of the Middle East from engaging in nuclear warfare. And that's wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. All right, now, we also have new information about the funding of the Open Societies Foundation. Of course, that is a left-wing slush fund created by George Soros, and they spent a lot of money going after President Trump and people on the right, but also silencing conservatives in the media. Apparently, they sent $250,000 last year to an organization that was called the Center for Countering Digital Hate. We've talked about them before. This is a new report coming from the Washington Free Beacon. Apparently, this grant provided support to this British nonprofit, which worked to pressure social media companies, advertisers, and investors into censoring what they deem to be hate or disinformation. Now, the report says that the CCDH has pushed companies to limit or remove content from conservative news outlets, including The Federalist, The Daily Wire, others that they considered to be racist. The CCDH has also previously urged Google to ban ads from The Federalist and Zero Hedge going back to 2020 over comments that were made about George Floyd. They labeled those as racist. This group was founded in 2018 by the former Labor Party operative Imran Ahmed. And according to the Washington Free Beacon, internal memos they got their hands on, published by Racket News, show that the CCDH last year quietly organized a campaign to kill Elon Musk's Twitter. Of course, now known as X. It didn't work, but what they were doing was pressuring advertisers to abandon the platform. We already knew about that, but now this is the first time we're learning that the Open Society Foundation actually funded it. That group also met with 16 congressional offices during Elon Musk's legal fight with the CCDH. They held meetings with Senator Amy Klobuchar, of course, a Democrat from Wisconsin, and they also lobbied for the creation of an independent digital regulator. The CCDH has also been especially aggressive towards X since Elon Musk purchased the platform. He sued them in July of 2023 after they claimed that hate speech had increased on the platform. Representative Jim Jordan had subpoenaed the group in 2023 for a list of donors as part of this investigation. And while the CCDH does not disclose their donors, the Free Beacon reported that other organizations have identified contributions, including $415,000 from the Skoll Fund, $403,175 from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Both of those came in 2023. And the group reported $2.1 million in revenue that year. The Free Beacon is also reporting that the Trump administration is also weighing action related to the CCDH and the Soros network. Perhaps this will be part of the DOJ's investigation into George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. Looking forward to seeing what comes of that as well. There are so many irons in the fire, guys. We are literally on the cusp of all of these things breaking wide open. We also have news about corruption coming out of California. The Attorney General has just been caught using almost $500,000 of campaign funds for his own legal defense in a federal bribery investigation. He took $155,000 from a family who's been paying bribes for over $3 million in taxpayer-funded contracts. Campaign finance records show he made 5 payments to a private law firm totaling $468,000. That firm is called Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati, and they've got a wide range of services they provide, including legal help for government investigations and white-collar crime. Now, Bonta, the Attorney General of California, his campaign confirmed the payments were for legal help with the ongoing federal bribery investigation. but they were listed as professional services, legal, and accounting. They didn't specifically state that they were for his own federal bribery trial. Now, the payments relate to the ongoing Oakland federal probe that indicted Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao. We spoke about her at that time, her partner, Andre Jones, and members of the Dong family. This happened earlier this year. The bribery was in regards to a city recycling contract. The AG of California, Rob Bonta, received $155,000 in campaign donations from the Dong family and their associates. After the investigation broke, he returned the money because everybody got caught. And, of course, no charges have been filed against Rob Bonta. But it remains to be seen if this use of campaign funds will be considered legal or not.
Golston, tonight we're learning Rob Bonta has spent a lot of his own campaign cash on legal help amid a federal bribery investigation. His campaign is saying that the money is to help with that investigation. But this is the first time we're hearing about this now 10 months after that investigation started. 2 days before announcing he would not run for California governor and seek re-election for attorney general. This was in February. Campaign finance records show he made 5 payments to a private law firm totaling $468,000. That law firm, Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati, has a wide range of services, including legal help with government investigations and white-collar crime. Bonta's campaign confirmed the payments were for legal help with the ongoing federal bribery investigation that's happening in the East Bay. That's the investigation in which Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao, the ex-mayor there, and a family full of business people known as the Dongs were indicted earlier this year.
Da-dong-dong. So it remains to be seen. Will this be an appropriate use of campaign funds? I don't think that it is. But if it's an issue for the DOJ to decide, I'm certain that they will now that this is coming out. All right, now let's check in with Michigan. We've spoken recently a number of times about public officials in Hamtramck, Michigan. Several of them have been wrapped up in an election fraud case for ballot harvesting and improperly voting. Now, the Hamtramck city clerk has also been wrapped up. She's been placed on leave after 37 ballots were found in her office the day after election. Here's the thing. The difference between the winner and the loser was only 11 votes.
Canvassers had a choice. They could vote 37 absentee ballots that weren't tabulated in the Hamtramck mayoral race or permanently reject those ballots.
Now, many times we have older machines, there's a lot of jams, so we weren't sure what the issue was. We looked around.
As mayoral candidates Muhith Mahmood and frontrunner Adam Al-Harbi looked on, Hamtramck City Clerk Rana Faraj explained to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers how 37 missing absentee ballots were found in her office the day after the election. She said on election night, her office received a call from the absentee voting board informing her there was a discrepancy and that the number of ballots tabulated by the machines did not match the number of physical ballots turned in. Out of 990 absentee ballots, there were 37 short.
The next day, when we were retaining the envelopes, is when one of my clerks realized that there were still ballots inside of the envelopes.
Faraj is now on paid administrative leave, accused of meddling with the election. The validity of those ballots are being questioned by the attorney for the Board of Canvassers, which must decide whether those ballots can count in the election. Faraj told them the outcome of a razor-thin mayoral race could swing in either direction, since the candidates are only separated by 11 votes.
So she is clearly in some legal jeopardy. How did those ballots end up in her office, and why weren't they not manually tabulated the night of the election? That is a question that needs to be answered. We should also jump on over to Minnesota for a case that we've been following for quite some time. This is the Minnesota Housing Services fraud case. A second guilty plea by a Somalian immigrant by the name of Asad Adaw, who had admitted to stealing over $2.7 million in Medicaid funds, defrauding Minnesota residents, has just been handed down. He admitted his guilt, and we'll see what they give him.
Can we ask you some questions?
Asad Adaw did not want to talk outside St. Paul Federal Court.
How many vulnerable people did you leave sitting in a snowbank so you could line your own pockets?
But once inside, he admitted on the record that his company, Leo Human Services, ripped off taxpayers to the tune of $2.7 million while falsely claiming to help 250 people find housing.
So what they would do is they had signs up. If you missed the first report that I did on this, they had signs up in areas where perhaps homeless people would show up, and they would say, if you're homeless, you would qualify for this emergency funding, which would be able to get you out of the cold and off the streets. They had a phone number that people would call. They would give them their information, their name, social security number, a contact number, etc. And then instead of using that information to get those people off the streets where they might die, might freeze to death, Minnesota is a very cold state, they would then take that information and they would defraud the system, collecting the money and then using it for themselves, buying luxury vehicles, multi-million-dollar homes, trips abroad, you name it. This is so corrupt.
How would you describe that $14,000 that was billed to your Medicaid?
Fraud on every level.
I never met with them. I've never even seen them.
Carol Evan first began investigating.
So now what's really interesting is how did they get the personal identifying information of people who never even reached out looking for assistance in these programs? Where did that information come from? How did they get their hands on it? Were they buying lists offline from the dark web? Were they somehow other ways stealing people's information? Any way you slice it, it's fraud. I don't know if they've admitted to it exactly how they came across these people's social security numbers and names, but now we've had 2 people plead guilty.
Getting the BMW driving business owner earlier this year.
We have so much work to do. I mean, I'm being asked questions here.
Well, people say you're not doing work, that you're billing thousands of dollars for work that's not being done.
Come on, man. Let's take the proper channels, man. I'm doing everything I am correctly.
But that was not true. CARE's investigation exposed a family fraud factory operating out of this Blaine home. Assad's brother, Anwar Adal, was running another HSS company called Liberty Plus, also stealing from taxpayers and preying on vulnerable Minnesotans desperate to find a home.
And you're sitting there in the cold thinking, okay, any day now. And that any day never comes.
When agents raided the Adal brothers' home, they seized stacks of cash, tens of thousands of dollars hidden under a mattress and in a suitcase beneath the stairs.
How did you and your brother get involved in this HSS scheme?
As part of his plea deal, Assad admitted he used the millions he fraudulently billed to lease that BMW and buy property in Kenya.
How much money did you move overseas?
Both he and his brother have now pled guilty to wire fraud and face 4 to 5 years in prison when sentenced at a later date.
These federal fraud prosecutions are just beginning to ramp up. Later this week...
You hear that? They're just beginning to ramp up. I'd like to remind everybody that these fraudulent activities began under the Biden administration, were obviously not investigated or prosecuted, and now in this administration, people are being held accountable. People want to see the big names, but you guys, there is a lot of grift that is happening at lower levels. People slipping through the cracks because, they're just not looking at them. But that's not happening now. People are being indicted and they are being wrapped up in these criminal schemes.
We'll reveal the latest findings in our Carol 11 investigation that uncovered how fraud allegations in yet another Minnesota Medicaid program are tied to a man's death.
And there you go. Murder. Responsible for that man's death. Absolutely unacceptable. Okay, we already talked about that one. All right, let's see. Lee Walden says, Northern Pike and I discovered Cliff High in his exploration into the existence of frequency in the inner soul and lots of good woo. If anyone is inclined, I highly recommend. Yeah, I interviewed Cliff several years ago, and he is definitely a great follow. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Let's see. Filter Dog says the DOJ has just charged Democrat Congresswoman Sheila Cherfulus McCormick of Florida with stealing $5 million in FEMA funds meant for disaster relief. If convicted, she faces 53 years in federal prison. Breaking news. That is great. The Canadian says, check out the podcast index in order to improve your podcast updates. Okay, let me see what that is. Is that a service that uploads the podcast for me? Okay, thank you. And Timberjet says, happy Thanksgiving, Canadian. CL Goober just gifted a 1-month bronze tier subscription that was picked up. Oh, sorry, 2 of them. PC Native got one. Clint got one. Ben Q Lurkin got one. CL Goober dropped 2 more, which went to reason8432@gmail.com. And then Scaldwelk also got one as well. Timberjet says shots every time he says bean or boot. All right. Now, the left would have you believe that being an ICE agent is akin to the Gestapo or the shock troops of the Nazis. But the truth is that these men and women are just doing their job. And there have been 100 vehicular assaults on ICE agents this year alone, and the violence is continuing to uptick. 8,000% increase. We have talked about this. Death threats reported by the Department of Homeland Security in 2025. 500% increase in assaults on ICE agents. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, who is a dynamite star, in my opinion, warned that criminals, including illegal aliens and U.S. citizens, are now using cars as weapons against federal agents, which obviously places their lives at risk. DHS officers will continue arresting the most violent criminal illegal aliens and that anyone that uses a vehicle to attack law enforcement will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now, the ICE administrative arrests stand at approximately 278,000. When combined with CBP border arrests and removals, that brings the total enforcement of arrests up to 520,000. Deportations and removals have already surpassed 527,000. with an additional 1.6 million self-deportations, and the administration is on pace to reach more than 600,000 formal removals by the end of the year. I just wanted to give a shout out to these men and women for doing their job in the face of enormous danger. Now we have an update from our man, Commander Greg Bavino, talking about the situation in Charlotte. He says that in Charlotte, we are seeing a very large percentage of criminal illegal aliens. 66% of the collaterals have significant criminal or immigration history. So they are going out to arrest the worst of the worst. And then the collaterals are the people that they're just hanging out with. They are finding that basically all of them are the worst type of criminal illegal alien, and so they're just removing all of them.
That we go after for specific criminals. And then, John, what happens is as we go after those target packages, we come into contact with other illegal aliens. We call those collaterals. And amongst those collaterals, we're seeing a very large percentage of criminal illegal aliens. Sometimes 66% of those collaterals have significant criminal and or immigration histories. That we go after for specific criminals.
So there's a reason that we're currently in Charlotte. Take a look at this as well. As a result of the operations that are currently taking place in Charlotte, apparently some schools in the area are reporting 65% of their students are absent now that Border Control is conducting these raids. What does that tell you? That tells you that fully 2/3 of the students at some of these schools are illegal aliens. They're not coming to school because they don't want to get removed. They don't want their parents to get arrested. And the Charlotte Independent School District has sent out a notice letting parents know that for those of them that are illegal, they don't have to come to school, because they apparently don't want them to get arrested either.
Details about how the presence of Border Patrol in the Queen City is impacting learning at the area's largest school district. For the second day in a row, students at several schools walked out in protest of the Border Patrol deployment here in Charlotte.
I also want to mention here that when we were talking about the failing education rates in the United States nowadays, I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that we have so many students in these schools that show up and they don't even know how to speak English. So they can't learn. They can't really get an education. And they are bringing down the average test scores of the American students who are there to learn. They're also making it more difficult for the American students to learn.
But an educator now tells us that's not the main reason classrooms are empty. Queen City News anchor Will Lewis spoke with the teacher who says the uptick in absences is a direct result of Operation Charlotte's Web.
David Gillespie says the last 24 hours have been tough.
I don't represent the CMS district nor my school.
But he's seen what 2 days of Customs and Border Patrol agents taking more than 130 people into custody.
I'm just sharing my opinion as a teacher in the Charlotte area.
does to students.
My homeroom class typically has 16 students in it. We had 4.
District-wide, there are 145,030 students enrolled in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. On Monday, 30,399 were absent, 28,136 unexcused. While CMS doesn't break down the numbers by ethnic origin, Gillespie, a multilingual
Not even a ponytail, it's a man bun.
teacher, did.
Children of parents from Angola, from Vietnam, but the students whose parents come from Latin American countries were the students we were missing. So that was kind of the line, even among the ML students, is that we were missing Hispanic students.
Davis says news of the operation reached his students well before they entered the classroom on Monday. He says those who have come back are still scared, and he's unsure if or when the other students will return.
They should be able to come there and get their education. They should be able to come there and spend time with their friends, socialize. They should feel secure.
Gillespie says,
not if they're illegal.
These days were not in his lesson plan, but it's a lesson everyone should learn.
ICE is never going to come to the school. Border Patrol is not going to come to the school. And I think what was chilling about yesterday is that it was demonstrated that they don't have to come to the school to affect the school. They don't have to step foot on the property to impact students.
In East Charlotte, Will Lewis, Queen City News.
Well, obviously, that means that we have a lot of illegal aliens that are clogging up American public schools. They are taking resources that are meant for American students, and they are disadvantaging the learning environment for those American students. It is a cross the board, a bad situation, an untenable situation. And if this means that because of the actions in Charlotte, we're able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I am 100% in favor of it. Now here, a protest last night erupted, fairly chaotic, anti-ICE protest in Charlotte. And you can see here in the clip, they are flying flags of different countries. They are angry about the 200 or more criminal illegal aliens and gang members that have been arrested.
Good evening, Jesse. We are only on day 4 of this operation. And
Mostly peaceful, LOL.
Already arrested more than 200 illegal immigrants, and the operation is getting a ton of support as DHS says that many of these people have criminal backgrounds.
Are they literally doing burnouts behind her? Is that what all the smoke is from?
Involving things like assault, gang affiliation, drunk driving, and more. But as you can see by this protest, there is also a lot of pushback towards this immigration crackdown. And I'll take a little walk to show our viewers a better look at this. But right now where we are has been sort of a hot spot for these protests. And that is because we are outside of a Latino bakery here in Charlotte that is temporarily closing. And that's because the owner says that ICE is targeting its customers. And we know that other businesses have closed as well. The school system here says 21,000 kids have been absent since this immigration crackdown, and the mayor says that people aren't showing up to their jobs, particularly in the housekeeping and construction industry.
Apparently, construction sites all across Charlotte are totally empty. Again, taking jobs from American citizens. But now that they're not going to work, perhaps these construction companies will do what's right and hire Americans to do the work.
We have seen a lot of people
No, that's her bodyguard.
have some pretty tense reactions because of this. We've seen people who spot ICE agents cussing at them, yelling at them. We know that there has been 2 separate car ramming incidents just here in Charlotte alone, and that comes as DHS says that they have seen an unprecedented surge in car rammings towards CBP and ICE agents. But Homeland Security says it isn't slowing down. ICE
Not slowing down. We are not going to quit. All right, you guys, real quick, before we go through this final set of stories, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, let's be clear, cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It's here. And the latest move cements that reality in the biggest way yet. Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's top crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee, DeFi, staking rewards, and the real-world perks like cashback on your spends to launch America's first CRO treasury. When it's done, this new company will be the biggest CRO holder out there. If you want in on the action, head over to Crypto.com today and grab some CRO. Let's make crypto great again. You can use the QR code or the link in chat or below the video. Thank you very much to Rumble and Crypto.com. All right, now, here's another one that's really going to get you. Here we have some video from a church in North Carolina. Now, this is not a mass. This is not a service. They're not there to worship Christ or to even think about what comes eternally after they're done here on earth. No, this is a nonprofit that is hosting a training for hundreds of people that are hoping to hide criminal illegal aliens from ICE. All of these people are being trained to push back against ICE agents and Border Patrol.
And you'll have be in a signal chat during your shift, and we're asking you to please post the details in the signal chat.
This is not a church service. This is a training being run by Siembra, North Carolina. It's called Safe to Work, Safe to School. All those people are here because they do not want Donald Trump's masked arms federal agents on the streets of Charlotte. They watched what happened in LA, they watched what happened in Chicago, and they're all here to be trained about how to get their neighbors and their friends and their coworkers safely to work and safely to school to push back on the Trump administration on what they are doing. It's a Monday night. We are at the Dilworth United Methodist Church in Charlotte, and the turnout is incredible. I'm going to show you again.
But we are worried not only about the violent overreaction by Border Patrol putting people in the military with this, we are worried about we don't want to
Yeah, wow is definitely the word. Not using it in the same way as that guy right there. However, I don't think it's going to have the effect that they're hoping for. Greg Bovino and the guys and women of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, they are there to go hard, and they are not going to slow down. Now, who is it that the left is trying to give sanctuary to? Well, take a look at this. Several years ago, when I was flying, I told you guys about an experience that I had on a flight. The American passengers of this flight were being forced to give biometric data. We had to have our irises scanned, and they were doing enhanced checks of American citizens. Yet, the entire time, as we were waiting in line, there were people who were being allowed to go to the front of the line, show a piece of paper, and then they would go and get on the plane. They never had to show an ID. They never had to give their biometric data. This is just clearly, it was illegals or migrants, as they were known at that time, that were being given free airfare, and they were being given travel anywhere that they wanted in the United States, and they never had to prove who they were. Well, it turns out that it wasn't just illegal aliens in general that the Biden regime was allowing in. They were also knowingly admitting convicted sex offenders. Now, these convicted sex offenders were allowed to fly on commercial flights without ID. All they had to do was show the TSA their sex offender paperwork. Check this out. Brianna Morello found this after she filed a lawsuit against the TSA last year. You can see here, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, order of release on recognizance addendum. You had to basically attest that you were not associating with known gang members, criminal associates, that you register in a substance abuse program, that you register in a sexual deviancy counseling program, that you register as a sex offender. That right there proves that they knew they were allowing sex offenders into the country, and they knew that they were allowing drug abusers and all of these people who were committing violations of the law. Right here, all aliens, order of supervision, out processing checklist. You had to check if you were on probation or parole, whether you had obtained an address where you were living, whether you had been entered into this ident program, the NCIC check program, the travel document application, and if you are a sex offender right here. Are you on probation or have you been paroled? Are you registered as a sex offender? Are you a victim, a witness, or a coordinator notified? Is your victim or a witness notified? Do you have written proof of counseling? And if you're a substance abuse user, whether or not you're on probation or parole, and whether you have written proof of counseling. So this was the paper that they were showing as they would walk through to jump on this plane without having to show their ID. They would just show this, and then they would be given access to the plane, probably free trips as well, because we know they were handing them out like cotton candy. All right. Now, Tricia McLaughlin retweets a post from Senator Chris Van Hollen, where Senator Chris Van Hollen reports on a news article here, which disingenuously reports on the removal of an illegal alien named Melissa Tran. He says Melissa Tran, now remember, Chris Van Hollen is the Maryland man love interest. Melissa Tran came here on a green card at age 11. She's since raised 4 kids, started a business, and is a beloved member of the Hagerstown community. Trump is deporting her despite a judge saying she poses no threat. Is she the worst of the worst? Do you feel safer yet? Hagerstown mother and nail salon owner set for deportation to Vietnam. And you can see here she went to George Washington University. Good for her as an illegal alien doing all that. But Tricia says you're omitting some pesky facts, Senator. Mong Tien T. Tran is a criminal illegal alien from Vietnam with criminal convictions, including grand larceny and multiple counts of forgery and fraud. An immigration judge issued her a final order of removal in 2004, over 20 years ago. ICE arrested her in May, and that's why she is being deported. All right, finally, Stephen Miller reports on a shocking statistic. 40% of rent-controlled housing in New York City is occupied by foreign-born population. That means that American citizens who may need rent-controlled housing are unable to receive it because nearly half of the housing is occupied by people who were not even born here. Let's take a listen to Stephen. Just got to get through this commercial, as long as it works. Ooh. Apparently their commercial did not work. Okay, here we go.
40% of the population of rent-controlled housing in New York City are foreign-born. Think about that. In one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world, 40% of rent-controlled properties are being lived in by people who weren't even born in the country. What kind of system is this? We bring in people from foreign countries, and then we pay to lower the cost of their housing, while people who were born here have to pay higher prices. So when President Trump is reducing net migration, that is what's going to ultimately, along with all these other steps, deregulation, historic tax cuts, going to bring down the cost of housing.
Yeah. Let me ask you.
Wonderful. Absolutely love it. Now, Stephen Miller also confirmed that the State Department is actively revoking tens of thousands of visas for people who should not be here. They have committed acts of one or another, something illegal, or they have done or said something to impugn the beauty and grandeur of the United States of America, and as such, they are being sent back to their country of origin. Now, I know that a lot of this, hearing all of this, can really bring people down. But in order to fix a problem, you have to identify that problem. Many people in this country were completely unaware that any of this was happening. If we hope to come out the other side, then we have to shine a light on it, and we have to do it as quickly as possible. I want to give a final thank you to let's see, Timberjet, who says shots every time. Okay, we said that one. Pkwy, thank you for the cookie. And Filter Dog, Charlotte is also a hub for human trafficking. Yes, we talked about that, I believe, 2 days ago. Charlotte, North Carolina, huge hub for human trafficking, victimization of children, women, terrible things happening there. I'm really, really happy that they're in Charlotte because obviously it's a hotbed for so much criminal activity. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. I went really long today. Lisa's probably going to be mad at me. Tell her thank you in the chat. Hit that like button, hit the thumbs up, hit the red pill. The more people who hit the like button on Rumble, the more likely it is I get on the leaderboard. And I'll be live at 9 p.m. with Brad over on Altered State at Badlands Media. And if I don't see you there, I'll be back tomorrow on Badlands Media at 4 p.m. for Taking It Back. I think that Adel is back, but if he's not, I'll definitely be live at 5 p.m. right here on my own channel for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck and God bless. We'll see you guys next time. All right, Pilled and Rumble, I'm going to send you guys over to Season Pixels, so make sure you say hello for me. Actually, Season Pixels is not... I don't think he's live over on Rumble. I think he's only over on Pilled. So I'll find somebody else to send you to on Rumble. Let me see who's live. Quite Frankly is live. I'll send the Rumble folks over to Quite Frankly. Make sure you say hello to Frank and say hi to Pixels for me. Oh, too late, Claire. I didn't know Shipwreck. Oh, God, I guess I should have known she was live because she obviously comes on before us tonight. Well, anyways, you're going to Frank. If you want to go to see Shipwreck, head on over to Shipwreck. Tell her I'll send people over there next time. Please don't forget to hit that like button.